like Joe Biden when you noticed he was in mental decline? Why didn't you? That's how you gotcha. He didn't do any of that.
No, I agree with you on that.
I
because
hope we're
background
live.
record sucks.
And if we
Yeah,
are,
background
then
sucks, so it's a gotcha. But like,
Thank
I got you
God.
on that because I really wanted him to.
Yeah, I'm
press her
watching
not on the questions that
a
he
little bit
wanted
of
to ask,
Tim
but on
Cass.
the
I
answers
love
she
that
was
guy.
giving.
Right.
Like when he said, you know, what
Really,
would you turn
really
the page on? And
good,
she basically
good
said rhetoric
amount
and
of
mean tweets.
information.
Which is
It's like,
It's
how
good.
about you press on that, Brett? Like, what is
Yeah.
she talking about? What last 10 years? She's been in office for 3.5. Trump's been out of office. She's complaining that he's been running this whole time. But that's because Biden and Kamala Harris suck. You know what I mean? Like,
All right. I
press
had
her
to
on her
restart,
answers,
believe
and
it or
instead
not.
he was really married to what he wanted to ask
I
instead
had to
of what he was
restart
saying.
this
I think that's
whole
totally
entire
fair. I
sculptor.
think he also
so.
probably knew that he wasn't going to have that much time with her, and so
Well,
he
that's what
wanted to get
everybody
to
thinks,
a number of different questions. There were a few issues, but overall, I think he did a pretty good job. Again, I also would have appreciated it if he pressed her more, but it's easy for me to Monday morning quarterback him when he was sitting across from the vice president.
I don't
I
think
will
so.
say
I
this,
mean, you
well-
do interviews. You know how to do an interview.
I've never interviewed Kamala Harris.
No, but
I
I
don't
think
think
you
I could
could.
talk to her.
I think
My
you'd do a better
ears
job.
would be like Trump's ears. They'd be covered in bandages after I spoke to that woman for a half hour.
Well, she is
But-
hard to listen to.
Yeah, she's very hard to
I
listen
think,
to.
Brett,
I just want to make this one point about the interview. One of the issues is that Kamala, she hasn't figured out how to brand herself. They're going back and forth between the adults are back in charge and I'm anti-establishment and I'm going to change things.
Trying to do
Biden
this.
was really clearly the establishment candidate. He was proud of that. They discussed him in those terms. She's trying to discuss this as if she's an anti-establishment candidate, but she's from the current administration. And one final note I'll add is all the people who are saying she looked good in this interview think that men can get pregnant. So their
Right. No,
opinions
that's
don't really
for
matter.
sure.
They're not in
That's for
contact
sure.
with
Yeah,
reality.
but
All
that's
that matters
what
is the
we're
agenda.
dealing with.
The counter
That's what we're dealing
programming
with.
from MSNBC was that Brett was, or people were saying that Kamala looked angry. They were saying it was because Americans can't handle a strong black woman because, of course, that was their initial commentary
Well,
after
also, we're all
it aired.
sexist, Natalie.
And
You
well, of
forgot that
course,
part.
but you know they're desperate. They also wheeled out Rachel Maddow last night. to
You're
talk about a
sexist.
transcribed bombshell drop on President Trump having to do with trying to negotiate. I think it was like $20,000 off of Stormy Daniels' legal bills in exchange for an NDA. That was their big scoop. But I will say it is interesting,
Well, that convinced me.
right? I know.
And I think
flipped
Kamala did
you.
win that debate now.
Yeah, it is interesting to me though if you read the Jack Smith filing and I think sort of
The Joe
big
Biden.
narrative on how they are setting up or at least kind of making us think that
Jojo.
President Trump is going to steal the 2024 election. This concept of a red mirage, right, turning into a blue wave. They say that a lot of the way, again, this is like MSNBC talking, but that President Trump is trying to create the illusion of success is that, oh, we're surging in the polls, we're doing so well, which I do think is accurate and true. But it is funny to me when I see left-wing media outlets carry that narrative because they're sort of in some ways helping the Trump campaign from their perspective of being able to give the Trump campaign ground to say that if there is a red mirage, right, where they're ahead on election night, but then it flips because of the mass amounts of mail-in ballots that always seem to cut one way with a weird statistical anomaly only for Democrats. That's why, to me, I get weirded out when I see, like, for instance, Politico yesterday running that long profile piece about how the Harris campaign is in shambles in Pennsylvania because I don't think Democrats typically project weakness, especially in the context of leaning into Trump's abilities to, as they would say, claim election fraud.
I think Kamala Harris even going for this Fox News interview speaks to the flailing of the campaign. I think this is a desperate attempt by some in the Kamala Harris campaign to reach out to Republicans, but I don't think this is an effective way of doing it. She also held a rally on this same day in Pennsylvania where she had many former Republican congressmen come and endorse her. It was including Adam Kinzinger, Lauren Comstock, former Republicans, but I don't think this is going to be effective for her campaign at all with this Republican outreach. As far as the spin that we're seeing from the left with this Brett Baier interview, I'm reading a headline from the New York Times. It says, Kamala Harris arrived for a Fox interview. She got a debate. That
Right.
has to be the spin. But from any other perspective, any interview that Donald Trump sits down for is at least this antagonistic, and he would get the interviewee would get praised for being.
So this
hard
is
on
something
Trump.
I
Let's
do
jump-
to my
let's jump into the
brushes.
story from the Daily Beast.
I always do this to
Fox
the
News'
clay
Brett Baier
too.
whines about Harris after bad-tempered interview. So he didn't. I'll play the clip for you, and you can hear it for yourself.
Dana, I'll give you a little behind the scenes here. I know you love this, and it fits in with Dana Reed Sports. You know, when the kicker in football, they call a timeout right before he's going to kick the field goal. They're icing the kicker. So we were supposed to start at 5 p.m. This was the time they gave us. Originally, we were going to do 25 or 30 minutes. They came in and said, well, maybe 20. So it was already getting whittled down. And then the vice president showed up about 5:15. We were pushing the envelope to be able to turn it around for the top of the 6 o'clock. So that's how it started. And I could tell when we started talking that she was going to be tough to redirect without me trying to interrupt. I did this with President Obama. At one point, I just said, Mr. President, I know you like the filibuster. I just didn't even have the chance to sometimes redirect in those ways.
So I wouldn't consider that at all to be whining, but this is how the corporate press is framing this, I should say, the Democrat media industrial complex. The one thing I would say on this is that, now that I think about it, Brett Baer probably should have just let her keep talking. Exactly. He should have asked her the question and then just shut up until she shut up, because then she would have spent 10 minutes saying not a single word. That would be the interview.
Mm-hmm. Also, this is one thing the media does a lot, and it's just because the left does this a lot, is they'll take words that in their estimation have been historically used to insult and dismiss women and then use them for men. So we see this like, he was whining, he was weak. In reality, when you watch that speech, Kamala Harris was very emotional and irrational. People are afraid to say that because if you're calling a woman emotional and irrational, you're a sexist. But she was. She was being very emotional the entire time. She couldn't answer a question without getting upset. She was stumbling over her words. She was clearly flustered. And you have headlines from Newsweek saying that she dominated Brett Baer in the debate. These people don't see language as something that exists to communicate truth. They see it as a tool for getting what they want.
Yeah, that's why they keep changing what words mean.
Exactly. So they're smearing Brett Baer here. He's whining, even though he's just stating the truth, giving some behind-the-scenes information about the interview. They said Kamala Harris dominated, even though it was so optically horrible that she dropped 4 points in the betting market the day after this interview. They're claiming that it was a debate when all he did was ask her very fair, very straightforward questions. He didn't dig up information about her past that she wasn't prepared to discuss. He didn't have some surprise that he was going to hit her with that she hasn't heard from some other interview. All he did was ask really basic questions that any other journalist would have asked her if she had had access to any, or more likely, I should say, if any journalist had had access to her, because she has refused to speak to anyone who won't worship at the ground that she walks on.
You're moving, you're giving her too much credit, because at first she wouldn't speak to anyone, right?
Nobody, even people friendly to her.
They were really just hoping to coast right back into the White House, or stay in the White House based on this whole vibe Brat Summer thing. That's what they were really going for. And it wasn't until, the end of August when finally she had to give an interview to, Dana Bash? Excuse me. And then after that, they did a couple friendlies, but they must be really desperate to go on Fox.
Very desperate.
The other tell, too, is that you don't typically see the Harris campaign leaning into the whole gender woman issue, right? They've made a purposeful attempt to stray away from that. So I think it does show you how desperate the surrogates are if they're unintentionally leaning into the gender stuff, trying to frame it as oh, man was mean to woman, it's sexism. In the same vein that I think they loved having the two female debate moderators for the VP debate. So when J.D. Vance tried to, talk over the, not fact check, it was a moment of, I believe as the mainstream media called it, of mansplaining, but they have this weird trope that they think that women for some reason are going to resonate with, powerful women being spoken down to by men and having to, speak back. And I don't really know who that's resonating with, except people who are squarely in the Harris camp.
I think it's resonating with people who are substantially older than Kamala Harris. I think that resonates with people in my mom's generation. My mom was a corporate attorney, and she spoke to me a lot about how difficult it was being the only woman in the firm who did the kind of work that she did, and et cetera, et cetera. But she's in her 70s. Kamala Harris is, also much older. So what is, that's not something that I think, for the most part, women of my generation or your generation or anywhere in between would really have to deal with. That's not something we've had to deal with.
No, it's too much the opposite.
Yeah.
We're too empowered.
Exactly. Well,
exactly.
That speaks to a point that I want to make here, and this is probably going to be considered an offensive point by many people, but I don't care because it's obviously true, and anyone who claims it isn't is either lying or lying to themselves. But while it is true that women don't want to be necessarily bossed around and told what to do by men. What women really, really, really don't want is to be told what to do by other women.
Look at the
Women
difference.
do not like being bossed around by
Wow,
another
look
woman.
at this difference
If
on
your
him.
wife or girlfriend or mother or any woman you've been
That's
close to
nuts.
has worked in an office with a female boss
Four.
or female coworkers, they will express to you their displeasure in being told what to do by these other women. So when Kamala Harris is condescending and talks down to men, women don't see that and go, oh, 1 point for team woman. They look at that and they say,
He's like
that's how
no
this woman
cheeks.
is
He
going to
has
be
this-
talking to me as a citizen
He's
for the
like
next
zero
4 years if she's
cheeks.
president of the United States. And as it turns out, women don't like being condescended to and spoken down
Well,
to
no
by
one
other
wants
women.
it.
Do
No
you
one wants
think
a
that
wicked
there's
stepmother
like
for
an inherent
president
thing?
either.
Exactly.
Do you think there's an inherent thing that men and women both have where they're just predisposed to prefer listening to men over women?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ladies, who do you think?
I don't think so. No.
I find most women broadcasters kind of annoying, which I'm aware is hypocritical.
I mean leadership positions like
I have a theory.
there was a
I think it's maybe more derived from people who aren't deserving of their leadership position, and I think there are more women who are in leadership positions that don't necessarily deserve those roles. They got their own sort of false pretenses, where I think if you're, a straight white dude, you had to work 10 times as hard to get there.
I mean, think about like Tulsi Gabbard. Like, would we be having these kinds of conversations about Tulsi Gabbard leading
Let's
the country?
see,
I don't think so.
Well, she's
I
also not shrill and condescending.
I'll be right back.
I kind of
So
think
it's not
she
a.
is,
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think it's.
Yeah, totally.
I don't think it's.
Well, you're just sexist.
Well, she's coming for your guns. I don't know.
just
I don't
sexist. Fair.
understand this like fetishization we have with Tulsi Gabbard, especially on the right. When at the base of it, so many of the
her gun position that you're citing like 4 years old.
does she not believe in the gun position anymore?
Yeah, not anymore.
What is her current
Like
gun
2 or
position?
3 years ago, she came out saying that she was wrong on the issue and she was like doing some kind of 2A thing.
Okay, well, I
Something
disagree
like
with her on more than just that issue, but I think on the right generally we're too quick to go with somebody who, hey, they wanted to come for all your guns 4 years ago. We support them more than we do somebody who said, hey, I don't want to come for your guns ever for the past couple of decades. But
Hey, no, I actually think
the
that's
redemption idea, we love that on the right. This idea of
But
redemption.
I
the
agree,
question
but-
of whether or not someone would be willing to vote for a woman has nothing to do with if Kamala or Tulsi. The question is, I think it's a fact that there are a lot of guys and women in this country who would not vote for a woman no matter who it was.
I think
You
that's.
see
I think
that
that's
in the
true.
fact that Harris is not endorsed or accepting or making the female part of her identity a big part of her
Right.
campaign. She never talks about it. She never wears dresses. She's always dressed like a dude. You could barely tell, like based off, I think, of her mannerisms and a lot of the way that she acts, that she's going out of her way. Frankly, she almost comes off as like gender neutral. Like it's a weird
Right, because on
spin.
top of everything else, the pantsuits are beige.
I
Really ugly.
I really do think gender dynamics play a role in as such that we do not have the sales development for how a woman needs to be publicly loved like a Donald Trump figure. So let me elaborate. We have had generations upon generations of male presidential candidates and how they need to act to win favor. We have not had that for female candidates. I believe it is possible, but when they send out Kamala and tell her to act like a man, it does not work. When AOC went up at a rally and she was screaming and yelling and hooting, she got made fun of for it. Now, for sure, you could be like, what was that, Howard Dean or whatever, who did the yeehaw?
Whoop.
Yeah, the
Yop.
whoop. Yeah, whatever that
It was a
That-
yop. It was the
and
Howard
that-
Dean yop.
Over.
That ended
Forever.
his career.
Yeah.
Just done.
So anybody can act bad on stage.
Don't say
But
yop.
if I think it is fair that if you look at Kamala and you look at Hillary, they laugh all the time, and I think it's because they're focus groups or whatever. They're like, you can't be stern like a man. You have to laugh all the time, and that's why the two major female contenders we've had in the past, in ever actually, have a laughing problem. I think they're being told to do it.
I also think
You
maybe
think
they
so?
don't understand femininity in the same way that you see how they project what masculinity is. I think most evidenced by that recent ad they put out, right? They can't put their finger on the pulse of what it means. It's this distorted sense of it. I think there's this kind of similar perversion in terms of their understanding of womanhood, girlhood, whatever you want to call it. But yeah.
Yeah, I'll
I'm
add this,
back.
too. So my theory on this,
All right.
because men constantly complain that people don't listen to men, women constantly complain that people don't listen to women. My theory is it's true and false in
Interesting.
different contexts. So I believe that women are listened to when they complain. They're not often listened to when they offer solutions. I think men are not listened to when they complain, but they are listened to when they offer solutions. So when a woman is complaining and a man who complains isn't heard, he'll go, no one ever listens to us, right? But when he starts offering solutions, he's actually more likely to be listened to. And I think that's built into our nature as humans.
What about somebody like, putting her policies aside? What about someone with the demeanor of like Condoleezza Rice?
It's been so long.
You mean what people will men vote for her?
Would men vote for Condoleezza
No.
Rice? She is a totally different vibe than either Kamala Harris.
I supported
Hillary
Tulsi
Clinton.
Gabbard in 2019. I thought she was the best the Democrats had to offer, and I want to see someone with a military background as commander-in-chief, as they're the commander-in-chief and chief diplomat. But I can respect Donald Trump trade and
So we can get a
skills, too.
coup.
That's good, but I would prefer someone who
Quite don't
served in the
agree with
military
that.
as Tulsi has. Condoleezza, but regardless of all that, I still believe that there's a large portion of this country that are going to be like, I ain't voting for a woman, no matter what. And I think it transcends age and demographic.
Consciously or subconsciously?
Consciously. Like, I can't remember
Like
who we
no
were
one
talking
wants to vote for their mom to be president.
Who were we talking to? Do you guys remember? They said that they were doing man in the street interviews, talking to young black men, asked them, who are you voting for? They
Was
said,
it Don Lemon? Don Lemon was doing this.
well, he's degrading them. But
Right.
what I heard is, actually, maybe I might have been talking to Lisa about this. These young men are like, look, I'm voting for Trump. And it's like, why is that voting for Trump? I don't want a woman president. That was it. That was the reason. And if you look at stereotypes and tropes, I just think that there's going to be a lot of guys who are going to be like, no way. Not going to
You
happen.
think that's an American thing? Because
No, I think it's a gender thing. I don't think it
in
matters
the
where it comes
UK,
from.
there was Margaret Thatcher, and she had a lot of.
Did they vote
black
directly
support.
for Margaret Thatcher, or did they vote for the party and the
Yeah,
party
they vote
appointed
for
her?
the party.
Exactly.
Yeah. What about Indira Gandhi? Wasn't she voted for, or was that
know.
like?
I'm not saying there will
India,
never
so
be a
everything's
female
totally
leader. There are many female leaders all
No,
over
I'm
the place.
just curious about
I'm
it.
saying that there's a portion of the population, and it's probably transcending culture, that
Mm-hmm.
don't want to vote for women.
That's interesting.
So, and it's funny because this is actually a leftist opinion, though the left gets mad at me for saying it. Women presume men to be in leadership roles. Women will vote for a man. Men presume women not to be in leadership roles. Some of them will still vote for women, but a lot won't. And I think the best example of this is, if what I was saying is wrong, the Harris campaign and her allies would not have invested so much in making multiple, I'm a man, so I'm voting for a woman, you should too, ads. What do they have, 3 or 4 of them now?
Well, and yeah, not just them, but like super PACs that are,
Exactly.
working for the campaign,
They
basically.
know that there's a problem with men who will not vote for a woman, so they're trying to run ads where it's like, I'm a man, and I'm not scared of a woman, so I'm going to vote for one. I'm like, dude, who are you convincing? That's not
those
getting
ads
anybody.
aren't convincing anybody. They're just hysterical. They're
One-
like SNL parody sketches.
One
It may as
thing
well be.
I also heard, this is another thing to consider, even if you're a woman who wants for there to be a woman president, the fact that this would be the first woman president actually requires a higher degree of selectiveness.
Yep.
You don't want, if you're a woman who really wants a woman president, you don't want the first woman president to be Kamala Harris. Like if we have to wait another 4 years, let's do it. I don't want it to be her, right? And I remember back in 2016, during the election, actually, when the results were being tallied, I was at a bar and I overheard a conversation, and this woman said, I want a woman president. I don't want it to be her. And I think that that's how a lot of women feel. I don't want it to be Kamala.
Well, and I think you wouldn't want it to be Hillary Clinton either, because
course
in
not.
both of those situations, it's someone who was selected, not
Right.
someone who came up through the ranks.
It's also
I mean,
fair.
who was the first woman that ran for president? Shirley Chisholm, wasn't it?
I knew
Shirley
that.
Chisholm?
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
I'm super into
yes.
And she
Men are
obviously
smart.
didn't win or anything, but like
Thank
she
goodness.
was at least a candidate who was selected by her constituents.
Let's jump to
Fair
this
enough,
story
yeah.
from the New York Post. We got this one. Biden tells Obama she's not as strong as me, and ex-president agrees that's true at Ethel Kennedy's service. That's not what they said. That's presuming what they said. So the real story is that Obama and Biden were talking to each other, but we could not hear anything they said. Everyone's trying to pull off some lip reading to know the secrets. Some have suggested that Joe Biden says something about Kamala Harris and the chances, and Obama says, nope, she's done. I don't know that he says that. Others have said, nope, that's over. I don't think anybody knows. But it did look rather interesting. Let me play the video for you, and you can, for those that are watching, you can see. For those that are listening, I'll just describe it. There's no sound. I mean, it's just piano music. And then, nope, that's not on. He did not say that. Like, I can't stand this body language lip reading people.
I know.
The
No.
biggest grifters.
Right.
It's true.
They're claiming he said, no, that's not on. His mouth does not say on.
Yeah, I heard some people say that Obama was saying it's over to Joe Biden.
That's gone. That's done. He's not saying on.
They're probably not even
No,
talking.
But it says unintelligible when you can't
Right.
hear any
Just
of it.
don't
It's
see it.
No, but this part's unintelligible.
Maybe she can. She's not as strong as me. No, you know what I think he says right here? It looks like he might be saying, by the way.
Yeah.
I thought he said by. So I watched this without looking at any of these lip reading things. He taps him, by the way. Something, something, something. We don't know. But this is the actual big story of the day. I didn't want to lead with it because it's not anything
'Cause
happening.
It's a little weird.
Well, but it's like, so
Yeah.
what do you guys think?
The other-
The theory is that this is Obama telling Biden Kamala can't win.
So I look a lot at when these guys are all giving speeches and talking and stuff because I transcribe it, and usually I just transcribe it by hand because whatever. I hate the AI thing. Anyways, you can't always. It doesn't. Their mouths don't look like the thing that they're saying. It never does.
Yeah.
Whenever you're like scanning through looking for exactly what they were saying.
I think, as Seamus, you're somebody who makes people's mouths move all the time with words, so you know exactly what they said.
No, actually, that's why I know that we have no idea. Because one of the things that they teach you in animation school, but of course I knew long before animation school, is that you can lip sync with a remarkably limited number of phonemes. You only need, like, really, if you want to get really low budget, like 6 or 7 mouth shapes that you can combine into basically anything. The fewer shapes you have, the choppier it's going to look. But it's really, really easy to fudge that.
Yeah.
There's just a set number of shapes we make with our mouth, and it is really, really difficult to pull words from that just based on the visual alone. That's why bad lip readings is so popular. They can make people say a lot of things that we know they didn't say, and it's hilarious and absurd.
And there's a viral one. It's an AI audio where Obama says that Kamala Harris is retarded. And, I am not amused by it because the first few seconds are actually spot on. And I was like, it was scary how good it actually looked. And that made me realize there probably is an AI program you could load this into, and it's going to be able to look at the way their mouths move and give you a 100% transcription. The way all this AI stuff works is you guys know how CAPTCHA works?
Mm-hmm.
It'll be like before you can go to this website, you got to type in this word. What you're actually doing is not passing a test, you're teaching the AI. The company is using you as free labor to transcribe visual text into the word to tell the computer what the word is. With that massive decentralized labor force, AI has been able to now read physical images, like actual images of written word. If you were to load up every video ever with a transcription of someone talking, the AI would be able to then see what the mouth is moving and the words that are coming out. So there is a program out there that can tell you exactly what these guys said. You don't need a human to do it.
Whether or not this is exactly what he says, and it'll be very hard to ever get down to the truth of it at all, I think this is a sentiment within the White House, definitely within the Joe Biden staff. As the race continues to tighten, people are trying to get ready for the case of Kamala Harris losing in their minds, and they kind of want to get ahead of it. Joe Biden is filled with rage that the idea that he probably had just as good a shot against Donald Trump than Kamala Harris did, all else equal. So, again, we're seeing the Kamala Harris. As we see more of the Kamala Harris campaign flailing, I think we'll see more of Joe Biden saying things like, yeah, I told you so. This was a dumb move all along.
I think it's also really just they're amping it up to be a story because I think it happens in the context of the ongoing kind of shade war between the different warring factions within the White House, right? You got Bill Clinton like dissing Kamala Harris out on the campaign trail for what really should be a non-story, right? It's a video that no one really knows what they're saying, and I even think it's more interesting to suggest that right now they're like super buddy or whatever, because I think it was just a few days ago, right, in Bob Woodward's new book War, where Biden was bashing Obama, saying that it's like his fault that Ukraine has been melting down. But
Yeah, the other piece of it too is that there's one giant story, and it's the election. And no one knows what's happening with it. No one knows what the answer is going to be. So every day people are just like, what's the answer going to be? I don't know. Here's an indication of what the answer might be, but we still don't know what the answer is going to be. So this is just part of that. Like some days, some news stories, there's one story.
I kind of.
There's like that's what it's going to be like on election day. We're all going to be sitting around all day going, "There's one story, we don't have the answer." We're all glued to our devices looking for it.
I'm kind of hoping it'll just be something no one expected, just like a totally random thing. Just
Like what?
kind of
Kamala
surprised
winning,
elected
you
somehow.
idiot?
And like Trump and Biden become friends and both announce their resignations and they're
Oh,
starting
come on.
a theme park together and we're just like, what is happening?
This
And then George
guy's-
W. Bush shows up and he's like, well, I'll take the job. And then they're like, what? He's like, but I'll be VP. And then Condoleezza's like, I'll be president. And they all agree. And then we're just sitting here just, what is happening? Obviously, I wouldn't want either of those people to be president. I'm just saying it would be funny if some weird random thing
If
happened.
something-
Yeah, of
I mean,
course.
well, RFK's kind of still banking on that, right? He's
Yeah.
like, in some universe, I could potentially be president. That's why I didn't withdraw. I suspended in certain states, but I'm still kind of hoping for
When
it.
it comes to tension, alleged tension between the Joe Biden staff and Kamala Harris campaign, do you guys think that's more narrative or truth?
Oh, I think they probably don't like each other. I mean, everyone knows Kamala Harris was picked because she was a black lady and had absolutely no other qualifications, and that's got to rankle. And then especially now that everyone kicked Joe Biden off the top of the ticket with no consideration, and now nobody even knows if he's doing anything as part of his job. He still talks about his cancer
quiet quit.
moonshot thing. He did the quiet quitting. He's really a Gen Zer at heart.
That's my Joe Biden quiet quit.
Yeah, so I don't know if the Kamala Harris campaign, for example, thinks like Joe Biden doing the Trump hat thing is probably him purposefully spiting them. Same thing when he said DeSantis was doing a fine job or whatever.
Right,
or
and
he spoke to
DeSantis
him well.
met with Biden, right, but wouldn't talk to Kamala Harris, and then Kamala Harris and DeSantis we're going at it.
Sure. Well, do you
Yeah.
think Joe Biden's doing this stuff on purpose, or Kamala Harris is just being sensitive over all of it?
I think that it's a little of both. I think Joe Biden's probably like, "What, you got what you wanted? Like,
Like, haven't you done
Enjoy it.
enough? Haven't you
Enjoy
taken
it.
enough for me?
enjoy yourself, Kamala. I hope you like it now."
There was reporting out today probing into the transition efforts of the Harris campaign, and for most of the high-level positions, they were, I think, looking to basically ditch a lot of the Biden holdovers. So I feel like from a political speak standpoint, too, that sort of shows you the difference. And, too, she said it last night on Fox, I think the most blatantly that she ever has, my administration will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's.
This is a very fragile Democrat coalition we're seeing here, not only with the moderates, but also on the far left with how pro-Israel Joe Biden and Kamala Harris has been. So we will see the figurative knives come out following Election Day when Kamala Harris comes just short of becoming
Well,
president.
and the other thing too is Biden wasn't allowed to pick his own vice presidential running mate. He was basically told that he had to pick a black lady. There was a short list of women that he was allowed to choose from.
I think he put that contingency onto himself, though. Like, this was
Really?
all a political move. He didn't pick. He picked her because he thought. He picked her because he thought it would help him win, not because.
Sure. No,
and
for
that's
sure.
it. So it's a political calculation.
But I mean,
strictly.
he wasn't. He wasn't able to pick who he thought would have been a better running mate.
Well, it's with your vice presidential pick. I think it's all about winning when it comes down to it.
Sure, because that's the only. I mean, ever since John Adams, John Adams really did the vice presidency dirty by just saying, "Well, since me and George don't get along, I'm going to back off and let him do whatever he wants." Like that was a dumb move. He should have actually. He just showed up at Senate every day. Like he
Kamala
should have
Harris
actually
has
done
been such a
something.
consequential VP too, with her tie breaking of votes. So
Sure.
she
Well, that's
rarely
she was
33.
in the mold
Very
of John
disappointing
Adams.
for her.
That's what he was doing.
Ah, indeed.
But she's
Yeah.
also the border czar. Let's not
Also
forget.
the borders are.
Yeah, with her one call to the president of Guatemala, and then her office by June saying
Do
that's
not
not our
come.
job.
Do not
Do
come.
not
Did her,
come.
did her
Don't.
job. Yeah, crushed
Well,
it.
I'll have you guys know she was the last one in the room for every major decision that Joe
Including
Biden
the
made.
withdrawal.
'Cause she
from
got there late.
Afghanistan. Right. You get in late. You still got to punch your
So
time
that's what
card.
she
you
meant. Like
stay
that's what they
late.
meant. She was the last one in the room.
Right.
Indeed.
What
All
did you
right,
say,
ladies
that
and
black
gentlemen.
people are always late, Seamus?
That's not what I was saying. You
No,
said
Charlemagne said that.
Charlemagne did say that,
Charlemagne did say
literally
that?
told that to Kamala Harris.
and she left.
What was the
Yep.
context?
It was
She
a-
said, I was late by a few minutes, and he was like, well, you are black.
Did he really say that?
He really did. That's a quote.
It
That's a
was
quote.
actually kind of funny.
We're going to jump to this next story, and we have it here from the Post Millennial. Biden-Harris admin's disaster loan program tapped out after hurricanes. But wait, the next story. Biden announces $425 million in military aid for Ukraine.
How could
And
both things
now,
be true?
you may not be very angry at this, so I'm going to play this video for you.
So
So my mom lives across the street. She's 92 years old, and as I was trying to get her to the door, my husband looked out and he says, "We can't get out." We went to the back door, and my husband got a foothold because the water was probably knee deep, and he pushed me across the water to where I could get a foothold. And then he got my mom and put her out to where I could get a hold of her hands, and I pulled her to me. And then I saw my house. It was just like it picked up. The water was over the top. You could just see the eave.
Oh my God. My Jesus.
Just like it floated away. And as it went across, I think the tip end of my house hit my mom's house. And hers just uprooted and it floated away. So we just lost both of them. We are alive, which I'm so blessed and so grateful. But
Thank you, Jesus.
we've lived here 50 years, and my mom had lived there 70 years, and we've just never seen anything like this.
So shout out to the Appalachian podcast. And thank you for watching that short clip of this woman who is suffering. It's brutal to watch. And I hope y'all are watching this are not sad. I hope you're infuriated, because the context is the loan program for disaster is tapped out, but $425 million of American taxpayer money is flowing right over to Ukraine. So I don't care what the reason is. I don't care for the fact checkers to come out and say, "But Tim, those are different funds." And Congress has I don't care. Congress should get their asses back to Washington, D.C. and make sure that little old lady can take care of her mom and they have houses before they give one penny to Ukraine.
You have to stop giving the benefit of the doubt to political actors who think that you're evil and that your way of life should be destroyed, right? We have to look at this and we have to say, you know what? Because we don't trust these people, there's only one answer to this. The purpose of a system is what it does. The purpose of this system that our leaders have developed is to send money to foreign countries and allow Americans to die.
It's not
Wait,
even
wait,
America last. It's quite
Yeah.
literally America never, right?
America never.
And it's not even just the 425 million that they announced today, because this is all coming from, what was it, about a month ago when they were negotiating the CR. They were coming up against the deadline that the White House was going to have to appropriate the $8 billion in aid for Ukraine. And it's so wild, right? When they had an outstanding $8 billion worth of funds for Ukraine, instead of reappropriating it for the United States, they chose to continue to administer it to Ukraine. But it was October 2nd, as people like her were having her houses ripped away, that they actually gave several $100 million via USAID to Ukraine for, I kid you not, storm preparation and winter weatherization efforts.
Yeah.
And remember, but it's so tone deaf. You have Kamala Harris tweeting, "Oh, I'm giving $157 million to Lebanon." And I think, too, you know, as much as we could rank on how obvious it is that all they care about is Ukraine or Israel, any other country, it's very interesting, right, for all the what they claim to be bipartisan
Don't
or
talk about
independent
Israel,
NGO
bitch.
type activist groups that were busy giving upwards of $1 billion, right, to election administration in 2020. Now you see the continued reporting, NBC out today saying that, oh, there's difficulties with voting, especially in rural counties in North Carolina. You have David Axelrod celebrating that rural people probably won't be able to vote.
So
Right?
upsetting
And
to watch
it's
that.
wild. And frankly, I think it's proof that all of that private election spending in 2020 was set to turn out votes for Democrats, because where have they been after the hurricane, right? They haven't offered to give a single penny. I believe the number that I saw at the latest was $30,000 from Kamala Harris and Joe Biden in its entirety to help voter efforts in North Carolina. And then, of course, you have far-left lawyer Mark Elias celebrating the ballot changes that they've instituted there. But the hypocrisy there is just, it's so glaring.
Congressmen constantly argue that they can walk and chew gun at the same time when it comes to supporting Ukraine and supporting domestic issues that we have going on. And I think and I hope it's true, but if it is true, then they should hold themselves to that standard and actually deal with these other issues that Americans are facing. I think support for Ukraine is important, but you're opening yourself up to these very easy political attacks by not dealing with domestic issues at home
Well, it's more
while
than just
helping.
a political attack. It's Americans who aren't able to fix their houses, who are going without disaster relief funds. And it's a southern border that there's reporting today. A third of the cameras are inoperable and turned off, so anyone can enter this country.
Yeah, but I don't think these things are zero. I think you could do both at the same time.
Well,
I
think
believe
the point
Congress
is the
when they said that. But
prioritization should be that you should put America first, and when you're running out of funds, the disaster loan program, and Ukraine is getting an additional $425 million today alone on top of $187 billion. There's a very, very clear prioritization going on that's putting Ukraine first. And the further proof is that when they're debating, right, the CR last time, they said, if you want the border funding, you have to have Ukraine funding too. You have to have funding for Taiwan and Israel too.
Yeah,
I totally
not just Ukraine funding, but like only 1/5 of the budget can actually be dedicated towards improving the situation at the border, and the entire rest of the bill has to pay for. So really, it was actually a aid to Ukraine bill with a little bit of border security tacked on.
I don't even think that it wasn't. It was amnesty. It wasn't even border security.
No, unless the border bill is opposed by the Southern Poverty Law Center, ACLU, and every Democrat, it's not a border security bill, right? But
it's so funny.
But it's also crazy too, right? When you see Martha Raddatz sit there and say, "Oh well, handful of transnational criminals and gangs are taking over," you know.
It's just a handful, Natalie.
Like,
you think
It's just a couple of apartment complexes.
Yeah, like you
Just a couple.
think that
In
the
San
same
Antonio
ruling
and
class,
Aurora.
that like the ruling class in DC would be okay with a handful of Ukrainian territories being ceded to the Russians. They aren't even okay, with
it.
I am, right? They aren't even okay with a handful of compromises coming from Ukraine sitting down getting a peace treaty. So I think you see the
And you saw
glaring-
today, like, Russia is bringing in 10,000 North Korean troops to fight Ukraine.
Well, and two, I think
10,000.
the most concerning part
They've
too
got a
Wow.
deal. Putin
Oh,
and Kim Jong Un have a deal, and
That's dangerous. Those 10,000 North Korean fighters are going to get to experience life outside of their.
that's dangerous too.
Utopia.
Well, but you know what?
You're gonna
Maybe
get on
they will
TikTok.
take maybe they will take a cue from Russia, because Russia, after they sent all of their fighters into Europe, once they brought them home, they sent them to Siberia or executed them. So maybe that is part of North Korea's plan. But North Korea also blew up like land crossings between North Korea and South Korea. They're really moving in a different direction right now.
You mentioned Russia. There was a PolitiFact fact check that they put out that they were tracing a lot of so-called hurricane disinformation to foreign agents, such as Russia, believe it or not. And they were actually calling, I think it was MSNBC on the Sunday shows last week, they had Nina Jankowicz on of Disinformation Governance Board fame to say that they should bring back the Disinformation Governance
were
Board
praising
because
her.
of this. And I think that they will use what happened with the hurricanes, right? This massive tidal wave, no pun intended, of disinformation that has, cost Americans their lives, when in reality it's the continued prioritization of Ukraine and every other country except the United States. But they will use it to lay the predicate for more censorship going in to the 2024 election. You already see it with House Democrats sending letters to all the tech platforms in light of what happened with the hurricane response, saying that you guys need to censor misinformation and conspiracy theories. You guys need to partner with fact checkers and be very proactive in how you're going to approach that. So they're definitely weaponizing this narrative, in my opinion.
How about we have a law that says we can give aid, right? If Congress approves aid or whatever, and then it also states that at the time of a disaster, all aid for any foreign entity is diverted to the U.S. to alleviate said disaster. And those disasters will be based on disaster declarations and states of emergency. And you know what that means? Well, we've been in a state of emergency for what, like 100 or something, like forever? Yeah, no more money ever going to any other country until we end those states of emergency and those executive authorities.
I mean, that's fair enough if we are in a state of emergency.
Why are we giving our money away?
Yeah.
It's like your house is on fire. Like, emergency, quick. Hey, you want to order pizza?
I wish the military-industrial complex would weaponize the southern border and viewed that as much as a cash cow as they would the borders of other countries. But a girl can dream,
Is there something in Mexico? Can we discover oil in Mexico somewhere or something?
Yeah.
Because then,
right?
and then the U.S. is going to be like, send in the troops. We have Alaska. How come we don't occupy Alaska?
Well, because Tim, I actually don't know if you know this, but when you pull oil out of the ground in the United States, it's bad for the environment. But when it's done in another country
And then we
and
buy
then
it.
sent here, it's good for the environment.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
So-
didn't
Carbon
know that.
offsets.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Thank you, Seamus.
You're welcome.
That was-
You guys should really get educated on
The
this.
audience is much smarter now, having listened to what
I'm
you
so
said.
glad I can educate everybody on that. What's hilarious, of course, is it's the exact opposite. J.D. Vance made a really good point, too, during the debate. I thought he had one of the best answers I heard on climate change, which is The United States has much cleaner energy than every other
That's right.
major country on the planet. So if you care about green energy, you should want the American economy to be producing the most energy and to have the most industry.
Agreed.
Man,
Jump
it's
to start
hot.
from the post-millennial. Trump visits Bronx barber shop in pitch to New Yorkers. The workers had "Make Barbers Great Again" shirts. So Trump is going to the Bronx. He's trying to win over more
No tax on
men
tips.
and in the urban environments as well. It's actually pretty surprising to see Trump going to New York. But I got to tell you, I was in Philly recently, and there were Trump flags in Philly proper, big
Like
ones,
in Center City?
in Center City. And
Wow.
I was surprised
That is surprising.
because in an urban center to see Republican flags is not normal.
I used to live there, and in Philly, you protest the DNC, and you protest the RNC, and you protest everything that comes
Trump
down the pike.
flags. There were Harris Waltz little ones, but they were just like yard signs we'd see propped up. We saw Trump flags, and we went all over. We drove north, south, central, and we saw a bunch of Trump flags everywhere. Now, while Donald Trump is trying to earn favor with black men as well, because Kamala is doing poorly, the good news is Don Lemon is scolding them. Take a look at this clip from CNN.
You're talking to
Oh,
a
man,
lot
that guy
of
keeps
voters,
putting his
and I
foot
would
in
just
his
say that you
mouth.
texted me right around the Democratic convention, and you
I
said,
don't know. Where's my
"I talk
papito?
to people
I need to
who
talk to
have a
him.
Problem with black men."
Yeah, and I told the campaign I did not hear from them. I mean, who am I for them to get back to me? But there's a problem. And look, I went from battleground state to battleground state. When they invited me to the convention, I didn't just want to fly there. I said, I'm gonna go and talk to voters in battleground states, and I did. It was not curated. I went up to people just doing man on the street. Who are you going to vote for? Black men. And time after time after time, they said, I'm voting for Donald Trump.
Why?
Nice.
Now, their reasons why. They said because most of the time they said, well, for economic reasons, right? Or because he gave me a stimulus check. And I had to correct them over and over and tell them where that stimulus check came from a Democratic Congress and from Nancy Pelosi. And that Donald Trump actually held the check up so that his name could be put on the check. So they think they got the check directly from him. Meanwhile, Joe Biden has given 1 or 2 stimulus checks as well, but they seem not to know and understand that. You can vote for whoever you want to vote for, but the reasons that you're going to vote for them, I think that they should be accurate and factual, and you should know why you're supporting someone.
I think Don Lemon just showed how he has no idea what they're actually thinking. And he's making an excuse because if Joe Biden gave them 2 checks and Trump gave them 1 check, if it was about stimulus checks, they'd be saying, I'm voting for Kamala. I'm hoping that we get stimulus checks again, but they're not. Clearly, that is not the reason.
Yeah, I mean, it's really condescending. There's this Marxist element, too, of having to analyze everything through the lens of economics and assuming that people are only making their decisions based on where they think they're going to get money or have gotten money.
Based on how much the government is going to give.
Them. And
Not
there's
everyone
truth in
wants
that.
the
You can
government to
absolutely
give them.
buy, the government absolutely does buy people's votes in this way. But you have to remember that even though the left tries to build these coalitions of people who they see as being oppressed and then just assume that they're all going to get along with each other, the truth is the black community is more socially conservative than the Democratic Party would like for them to be. That's a really vague, oversimplified way of putting it to call them socially conservative. But on issues like gay marriage and transgenderism, they're certainly not to the left. So you can imagine why, if being aware of Kamala's position on those issues, they wouldn't like her. It doesn't just have to be a financial thing.
Well,
But they don't
also-
want to admit, like, they want you to think that any socially conservative position is adjacent to white supremacy. So they can't admit when black people are out of line with the establishment.
There might
those
also be
issues.
something to what we were talking about before. Maybe they don't want to vote for a lady for president.
That's
think
also
that's
very
true.
likely. Yeah,
You know,
very likely.
And they don't want to say it.
Yeah.
I mean, why would you want to say that?
I don't know. I kind of feel like if you're a young man, you're going to say it.
You're going to say,
Maybe.
well, and also I think because white people have been beaten down and basically forced to consume this narrative of our own guilt, white people are less likely to say politically incorrect things. I mean, black men don't have white guilt, so they are more likely to just say something politically incorrect when they believe it.
Right.
Oh, and a lot of
Perhaps.
you guys might be asking yourselves, why is Trump spending any time in the Bronx? Why is he spending any time in
Well,
Long
he's
Island?
making a play for New York. He
Well,
said it.
Well, thank you, Libby, for answering the question I was about to answer myself. So the
Well, you were
reason Trump
asking.
is
Oh, I thought you
going
were
to
looking
New
for an
York
answer.
is not because he thinks he could win New York, but it's because the path for Republican domination over the House of Congress is through New York. So all of the districts surrounding New York City, where people will come to his rallies from, is the way Trump will win the House. So on Long Island, I would call
Malachi,
right
we
up
gotta
north,
get our
White
country
Plains,
back.
right above the city. All of these areas were ripe for their picking in the past midterm, where Republicans had some seats, and Republicans want to remain in those seats moving forward. And that's the way Trump's going to be able to be effective if elected in office, because he will need Congress.
That,
behind
that,
him.
that sounds like but that sounds like Donald Trump has resigned to already having won the general, and now he's going to pick up seats.
Well, I think it's something that he doesn't want to forget about, because I believe it was his first term where he was dealing with a slight majority, and then at that midterm he lost his majority. I think he understands the importance of having Congress behind him as well, because he can't be as
People people also forget that New York basically delivered the red wave. It was 5 seats in New York in 2022 that Lee Zeldin flipped.
What I'm saying is that if Trump is willing to take time right now in the middle of the presidential cycle to go to New York, which he cannot win because he wants to help win congressional seats, then he feels like he's already won the general.
Maybe he wants to take Barron
He
and
would
his
be in
friends for dinner.
Ohio, Pennsylvania. He'd be in Wisconsin. And he did go to Wisconsin, I think, today, right?
Yeah.
But if he's spending time in New York for what you're saying, he's basically saying, you know what? I'm doing so well. I've got time. Let's try and win some congressional seats. Like, he views himself as being way ahead.
Yeah, I think he's thinking of a grand campaign. He's coming at it as this is his third presidential campaign. He understands the lay of the land. He understands the importance of the House. And that's why I think he's spending so much time, or well, really any time in New York that we haven't seen in
He also
these
got a
past
great
two
reception
campaigns.
in Crotona a while back. Didn't he do a big rally in Crotona in the Bronx?
Yep,
Crotona
he's been
Park?
there. He's been there a few times.
He did well there. And then AOC and Jamal Bowman went out there and they bombed.
Yeah.
Well, and all the Democrats have said too. I mean, you can see it in their actions with the whole January 6th stuff, but they'll just work to impeach him if they have a majority in Congress, or at least
Yeah, that's how they would literally spend the entire 4 years.
Or worse.
Trying to do that.
Yeah, it would almost be so bad. Maybe the typical swing that you see in the midterms where it goes for the party counter to the president. I think it'd be an interesting comparison to see if the blowback from not getting anything done and just focusing on politically motivated witch hunts against Trump.
Well, let's just be frank. He hasn't been reelected, and there have already been assassination attempts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I don't think impeachment is the only trick up their sleeves.
And I mean, there could be more.
Mm-hmm.
The prediction is that there's going to be more.
I mean,
Iran. And then you heard Biden gave a warning to Iran saying,
and our own government.
Iran is
Right,
gone.
but
These
so
guys don't even have
whether
the
you think it's Iran or otherwise,
balls.
the point is, the narrative has been placed.
least
Iran
I
is
think
trying to
so.
take the life of Donald Trump. Biden has warned publicly Iran it is an act of war if you harm Donald Trump. And wouldn't the war machine love a casus belli for a war with Iran?
That's so ripe for conspiracy theory.
Right.
Well, and it's not even conspiracy theory, and I'm a little rusty on the facts, but I believe it was a soft merchant, right? The Iranian would-be Trump assassin that they arrested like 2 weeks.
Pakistani.
Oh, sorry. But but that to my point, most Iranian would-be assassins that we've seen, whether it was against like John Bolton or other types like that, they have explicit ties to whether it's the IRGC or just Iran in its entirety. But this Pakistani guy was only tangentially linked to Iran through the fact that I think he had like a few family members who lived there. He was not part of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. And it was the FBI that facilitated his entry into the United States via the southern border. But it was really interesting because in the affidavit that they had when they finally arrested him, all of the evidence that they used pointing to the rationale to arrest him, it had to do with acts that he committed after entering the United States. There was nothing to do with any of his activities before, which is historically sort of unprecedented when it comes to these foreign assassins. And this is the craziest part. The bounty that they say this rando dude that they used to push this whole Iran plot, that they say that Iran placed on Trump's life was $5,000. $5,000, when in comparison for John Bolton, I think it was hundreds of thousands of dollars over. So very weird, shady story going on with that guy.
I hope Trump's got good security.
Yeah, I really do too.
Because he's using Secret Service, and that report came out recently where they said
Need more money, of course.
if they do not, there was an independent report that said if the Secret Service does not have a fundamental change right now, the Secret Service cannot protect its designees.
Did you hear about the motion that was brought forward in West Virginia?
Which one was that?
I believe they said they would not certify the election if Donald Trump or J.D. Vance were assassinated.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know that they agreed to it, but it was proposed.
When Kamala Harris always has the refrain, I guess she changed it a little bit slightly when she said, "Oh, there's nothing I would change about a Biden presidency."
Oh,
I always
man.
think it's pretty dark, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't have given more Secret Service agents or rehashed what happened on July 13th.
You wouldn't have prepped better for the hurricanes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
for real.
You wouldn't go back to the border and try and say, there's
Maybe
nothing?
Maybe done better on that Afghanistan
No,
withdrawal.
they did everything they wanted to do.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Everything they did was intentional, and she's
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. The purpose of a system is what it does. All right. I'm not saying that's how we should always analyze things, but it's very useful in this context.
Let's jump to this story from the Wall Street Journal. Kamala Harris's agenda for black men will be open to all. Ooh, I can't wait to get my piece of these black men's money. So what was the point of Kamala Harris announcing that she was going to legalize drugs and protect the crypto assets of black men if in the end it turns out to have been an illegal proposal that will now be open to anyone and everyone?
Yeah, the point was to try and get black men to vote for her.
Exactly.
It was literally that was all it could be. And the administration knows that these proposals are illegal. She should know these proposals are illegal because her administration, the Department of Agriculture, was sued by white farmers claiming that, the Department of Agriculture's program to prioritize black farmers for loans was actually in complete violation of, everything, which it was. And the judge came out in the ruling and said, yeah, you can't do that. You can't prioritize loans based on race. You can't try and correct past discrimination by discriminating now. That's totally against the rules.
Especially not when it comes to food production. If there's one thing you really do not want DEI for, it's food production.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The purpose of farming is to feed all of us, not to make us feel all cheap and sentimental and good about ourselves because we have equity in farming. That's pointless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we also
Trying
have
to
to
see what
consider
else
this is
I
a
can
campaign
work
promise.
on.
So there's two things. Firstly, I don't think she cares about following through with any of her campaign promises. I also don't think she cares about the law. So it's anyone's guess whether this is just a promise that was made that was never intended to be fulfilled or whether they're going to try to break the law anyway. Biden has still tried, right? His student loan forgiveness proposal was struck down, and they said that he couldn't do that, but he still wanted to move forward with it. So they don't care. They're above the law.
Let me read this. Is really funny. It says, Vice President Kamala Harris's opportunity agenda for black men aims to shore up support from a pillar of the Democratic base with a key section promising $1 million loans that are fully forgivable to black entrepreneurs and others to start a business. And others?
And others is doing a lot of lifting there.
Well, it literally says that. It says it turns out that the words "and others" are doing a ton of work. The campaign says that the program listed under black men, the Black Men agenda, will be open to all Americans on a race-neutral basis. And others. That is so good. Guys, I'm hereby announcing that I'm ordering pizza for Seamus and others.
You're telling me I don't even have to pretend to be black to get all these benefits?
No, you don't.
I don't even have to fake it, like in an affirmative action way?
Seamus, if you help me clean this place up, I will order pizza for you and others.
But you see, that's a nice thing. It has to be
others
yeah,
is me.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a totally different thing. And it's $1,020,000 loans forgivable. That is
It's a grant.
huge amount of money. That's a huge sum of money. And we're watching people's homes get washed away in North Carolina. But this is the program. She also part of the marijuana legalization program that she's offering is very similar to the one that was offered in New York. And what happened in New York is New York decriminalized weed and said that people who had past marijuana convictions would be eligible for these licenses to open weed shops. But by the time they came up with their plan to give these licenses out, there were already all these weed shops all over the city. And so the city's been trying to claw back the decriminalization to stop bodegas from selling loose joints.
The domination from Democrats on their black constituency, that is how they win over so much of the black community. It's this dual-handed sword in a way because it's hard to maintain it. You won't be able to go much higher than that, and chances are that the other party's only going to be able to kind of make their inroads with the black community. That's what the Trump campaign has been trying to do because, if you're at 80%, there isn't much more of the community to win over, so it's right for the picking.
Mm-hmm.
Obama met with a bunch of young black men and said that I feel like you guys just don't want to vote for a woman. You got what is the white dudes for hair commercial? It's time to get over that.
Get over it. I'm strong enough to let a woman tell me what to do.
they are really worried about the woman thing.
They're really worried about it.
Yeah.
Man, that ad was great, wasn't it?
But there's like 3 of them where they're basically like, please vote for a woman. I just don't see it. But it's also crazy that so many young black men have shifted away from the Democratic Party, that Obama has to be like, guys, is it because you won't vote for a woman? Like, you got to do it.
Well, here's another thing that people
They
should
knew
really
this. They
consider.
knew this before they brought her in.
I mean, if anyone here was considering voting for this particular woman, here's something to consider. When Obama was elected, even though I didn't like his policies, right? And Matt Walsh has talked about this, but pretty much any conservative who was voting in this election, or that election at that time, will tell you, I wasn't glad he won, but if there was one silver lining that could have come from him being president, it was that race relations would improve. America wouldn't be seen as a racist nation anymore. And then race relations got way worse. So what does that tell us?
Isn't
okay,
that
if you
so
elect
crazy?
a woman president, you are not going to heal some gender
gonna
divide
be
in this
like some
country. It's
crazy
just going to
Me
be
Too
played
thing.
upon more. It's just going to be played upon more, and the division's going to get way worse culturally.
That's a really good point. Yeah, because after Obama was elected, you can track it in the New York Times and in all of the news media, the incidence of the word race, racism, race relations, all of that stuff really skyrocketed. And
Yeah, but I don't think it's related to Obama.
well, it may
you can
not
see,
be,
you can
but
see
like,
in LexisNexis all terms related to
what do you think it's related to? Why do you think racism
social media algorithms.
was totally fine and everybody was
Yep,
pretty much
Facebook.
fine to madness? It
Facebook.
went from like,
Yep, Facebook.
we have equality in the country to insanity.
Facebook.
You think entirely it's Facebook?
100%. And I'll give the rundown again. I do it a couple times a year. So if you look at LexisNexis, you can see the instances of certain words' appearance in newspapers around the world, not just in the United States. So Obama.
Oh, really?
Yep. It has nothing to do with Obama because it happened in every single country. What likely happened is that when Facebook implemented its algorithmic feed, when it initially started, it was reverse chronological, but they realized that once you got to around 300 friends and or liked pages, things you were following, you couldn't keep up with the changes, and this was resulting in a lower retention time on the website. So Facebook said, okay, let's use an algorithm to show people what they're more likely to want to see so they stay on the platform longer. Hence, if you post, one of the tricks on Facebook is to post, I just got married and had a kid. No, I didn't. I just had to post that. Hey, we're having a pizza party tonight. Come hang out. Because that way, Facebook will put to the top of everyone's feeds. So what happens is you have advertisers, and they're trying to figure out what content they can produce that's going to get a lot of traction on the algorithm. And so what they found was, one, rage shares more than any other emotion. There's people like cute animals and things like that, and saving animals, they do really well. But anger generates the most amount of shares. It's almost entirely among women as well. I worked for a company. When I worked for Fusion, they had a marketing guy who laid this all out, he said moms are the key demographic for sharing content and generating views on Facebook. So what happens is, in the late 2000s, they implement the algorithmic feed, which is basically words that are more likely to get clicked on are more likely to be shown. You ended up with BuzzFeed, Huffington Post, Mike.com, etc., doing this massive shift when they realized, hey, we wrote 10 articles today. One article was, John Kerry says this. The next article was police brutality, black man beaten. Guess which one got 1 million views?
Right.
Then they go, guys, we just made 10 grand off that article. People want this.
Let's
Write
do
more of it. But
Right.
they didn't want it. Facebook was just showing it to more people because of the algorithm. Then something stupendous happened. In the early 2010s, they discovered that if you write about X, you'll get X views. If you write about Y, you'll get Y views. But if you write about XY, you'll get XY views, which is a multiplication, not a doubling. So then you started to see articles about sexist, racist cops. Then you started to get insane articles, which people have made fun of at Vice.com, where it's like transgender ketamine dealers of Nicaragua getting arrested and facing police brutality. And you're like, what is that headline?
Everyone wants to read
Jamming as many algorithmic keywords as possible. The inverse did happen. The rise of alt-right and white nationalist content began to emerge as well, because there was a counter backlash to this algorithmic push. The issue? Our society thinks those things are bad. Advertisers don't want to put money on them. But if you go to an advertiser and say, do you care if your ad appears on content that opposes racism? They'll say no. Do you care if your ad appears on content that promotes white supremacy? They'll say absolutely not. We don't want that. This created a pressure in one direction where all the alt-right channels, and not even necessarily white nationalists, but counter, anti-woke and channels that were like, what's wrong with being white? started getting knocked way down, getting suspended and banned, and then all of the ultra far left crazy cultural Marxist stuff started getting promoted. That system is now cracking and buckling as Disney lost $1 billion on a bunch of their movies. Kevin Feige reportedly fired a bunch of their activists. They were like, hey, wait a minute. We've gone way too far in this direction because there was no check on it. This is why in the Obama years, we saw a massive spike of all these terms and all this terminology. It exists well outside of Obama. The LexisNexis data is crazy when you look at it. Every word related to social justice skyrockets. Now, it could be that you have ideologues working at Twitter and Facebook, and so they said, these are the words we want shared. I don't think it's the case. I think it was more emergent. When somebody would see a video about police brutality, they'd react to it. They'd get angry. It would slowly generate more traffic, and it would cause an increase in people writing articles about these things. It's what advertisers would fund, so it created a natural push in this direction, and that's why you ended up with...
Are you just blaming the social media networks and the platforms, or are you blaming the users or maybe bad users on the platforms at all, too?
It's the platforms.
You don't blame any of the people who are doing bad stuff? Okay, well...
What do you mean doing bad stuff?
Because there are people who have to make those articles and make those posts, and then
What's wrong? There's absolutely nothing wrong with writing an article saying, I am upset about police brutality. The problem is that Facebook created a mechanism by which it was the only thing you could produce that would generate revenue. Now, Facebook makes almost no revenue for these companies. Video is everything. Where are the big blogs these days, right? Most of them have gone defunct. But in the 2010s, in the late 2000s and 2010s, you were printing money. There was a website in the top 400 websites in the world that only wrote about police brutality because of Facebook. Millions of fans, millions of followers. That is an algorithmic push. The average person doesn't care about that stuff. Like, they care, right? If you saw a video where it's like a cop's beating a guy, you're gonna be like, hey man, that's not cool. But for every single article you read ever, that was Facebook driving it into people's minds. The best part about this is, and I mean that facetiously, a 10-year-old kid who signs up for Facebook, you're supposed to be 13, but he does. And the only thing he's seeing at the time is an endless feed of police brutality. 10 years later, Facebook is still dominated by this. YouTube is dominated by this. This kid is 17 years old going, this whole country is racist and they murder black people every single day. And then you see these man in the street interviews where they say, how many innocent unarmed black people do you think are murdered every year? And they go, 50,000. Because the only thing they would ever see on their social media was the far left ideology being jammed down their throats.
I'm curious your thoughts. Obviously, I think 2020 was the most poignant example of how the government can tip the scales when it comes to the censorship on these platforms or promoting certain narratives. I agree with what you're saying, but I do think it maybe treats these social media platforms as sort of like independent entities away from any government overreach. So when do you think that the kind of censorship apparatus that we've seen now developed to help shape the landscape?
So what happens is, following this massive push, you end up with the backlash. The media called it the white lash. We started seeing a lot of channels that were white pride. They weren't necessarily alt-right or white nationalist, but they were people being like, you can't attack me for being white. It's okay to be white, things like that. That escalated until you got overt white nationalists active on platforms, and then these platforms were like, we have to ban all these people. There was an adpocalypse, started removing them. I think it's actually, through these media machines, the politicians and the deep state are literally drinking the refuse of these platforms. Their minds become warped jelly. They then say, this is the world I want to live in, and they seek to implement that world. So, for example, Jack Dorsey said that Twitter was the free speech wing of the free speech party. Through these pressures that existed naturally in the market, Jack Dorsey was pumping feces right down his throat. And I mean that figuratively, obviously. He's taking the human refuse ideas of a broken algorithm and warping his mind. The only thing he sees when he's on X is everyone posting about nothing but social justice. He then can't see outside of his bubble. Case in point, when I went on and did that debate on Joe Rogan, and I said, your misgendering policy is biased. And he goes, no, it's not. How is it biased? And I said, because conservatives think misgendering is calling a female male pronouns. And a liberal thinks misgendering is calling someone the pronouns they don't wish to be called. And it's almost like he had never heard that argument in his life. So what happens is they start consuming a reality based on the algorithms that they've built, warping their frame of mind. You end up with young people who are entering into the intelligence agencies, entering into politics, and they're saying, this is the way the world should be. They then go to the social media platforms and say, we don't want far-right white nationalist fascists like Donald Trump winning. We can't allow that to happen because they are swimming in the refuse of their own of the social media creation.
I also think, too, it's quite interesting if you analyze government grants coming from the United States government to combat what they call misinformation, disinformation, conspiracy theories. Those terms were only really started to be heavily used circa like 2016. If you look, it's like 97% of them are post 2016.
Yeah, it's still live.
And I think you nailed it when you said it was tethered to Trump winning, because I think they knew they had to rebrand, right? The ad hominem attacks weren't necessarily working. So that's when you see this new misinformation, disinformation push, because it's just sort of a weird thing. They act like misinformation is like the largest existential crisis to the United States. But 10 years ago, you never heard about it. And I think if you go global, which I would argue a lot of this is in the same way that the UK and the United States have a weird sort of axis of evil when it comes to funding these censorship programs, that it's all inextricably linked to Brexit too. I think they tried to spin that, right, as kind of a result of disinformation. And it gets to, I'll never forget, there was a grant from the National Science Foundation just about a year ago where they weren't content with just debunking misinformation, but they wanted to pre-bunk misinformation, particularly tied to the rise of populism. And it was sort of saying the quiet part out loud, but I think that they realized that the ad hominem assaults weren't working, so they had to pivot to the misinformation strategy.
When Bud Light happened, I predicted we will find out that a millennial woman who recently got a promotion launched this campaign, which is destroying the brand. And I was correct. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah, that is what happened.
Yeah.
Because it is these millennials who have very little literacy in media go on a Facebook, and the only things they see is being slammed with social justice because websites like Mike.com were chasing money. And this is there's evidence of this. Mike.com started off as a Ron Paul libertarian website. Why? The Ron Paul love revolution was viral online, and it generated traffic and made money. When the algorithm started to change, Mike.com turned into a social justice website that pursued weird leftist garbage. That was it. They were chasing the money. So this millennial woman lives in this reality all day, every day. She gets an entry-level position at Bud Light. 10 years later, she's promoted to a VP of marketing, and then she says, we don't care about white men anymore. And they're like, whatever you say, it's your campaign and your job, and then the company implodes.
I think there's another element here, too, which is that there was a perfect storm. Because what the left needs is to be able to point to groups of people who they claim are oppressed, and then on that basis say that there's some reason why we need to completely restructure this society that in your day-to-day life seems to be working really well, but actually isn't because of how this group of people is being treated. And so right around like 2012, 2013, it became clear that the left had a cultural victory when it came to homosexual behavior, and you end up having gay marriage forced onto every state throughout the entire country by the Supreme Court. And so at that time, they didn't have as much of a leg to stand on and say gay people are oppressed. And they weren't at a point where they felt comfortable saying, if you don't bake the cake, you bigot, then you're an oppressor. And so it happened to be very convenient that they could shift into this narrative of, Remember how black people were oppressed? Well, it's still happening. It's still just as bad as it was in the 60s. We still have sundown towns, all of these things that we know aren't true.
And then you get a perverse world where Obama, who's married to someone that like half this country thinks is a man, is lecturing us on masculinity.
Yeah, well,
that's only because of Joan Rivers, right? Wasn't it Joan Rivers?
Yeah.
No.
Joan Rivers said that Michelle was a trans man. Or
You know,
trans.
she's
That
been
bitch has a dick.
campaigning with like transgender, like drag queen activists.
Cardi B and drag queens and.
Well, but it's interesting because also back in 2008, to say that about Michelle Obama would be considered a horrendous insult. But today, they actually can't explain why that's insulting.
Right.
They really can't. They can't say there's anything wrong with that. If Michelle Obama thinks there's something wrong with being called a trans woman, or that a trans woman is a less legitimate woman, then Michelle Obama is a bigot.
Remember that guy who did the video where he's asking the woman, he was like, well, how was transitioning for you? And she's like, excuse me? And he's like, was it difficult for you? And she's like, I'm a woman. He's like, right, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah,
That's so mean
like,
to do to
no,
a real
I'm an ally. And she's like, you think I'm a man? He's like, no, you're a woman. You're a woman.
That
I'm
was
an ally.
good. That's a good
and she's
skit.
like, I'm a woman. He's like, exactly. And then she was just like, what are you trying to say? I'm a man. He's like, well, is there another word you use for this? And so, of course, his point was,
They don't actually believe it. And listen,
Well, they're offended by it.
they're offended by it. It's obviously not a nice thing to say, but it's true. People have done this online where they will casually refer to liberal women who are pro-transgender as well-passing trans women, and invariably the women get offended. They're always offended.
Well,
Well, there's nothing wrong with it. Why does that offend you?
The real loser in the entire trans debate are masculine-looking and unattractive women.
It's also, it's very sad.
And it's really a shame. Like there was that whole thing. There was that Sydney Wilson the other day.
The basketball player.
And people were saying like she's trans, and I was like, no, she's just a tall, big lady.
And it's so funny because
she was not trans.
You thought it was a trans woman?
She played women's basketball for Georgetown in like 2010, 2011. She was just a big lady.
She looks like a
I'm
guy.
thinking, like, it's a bad time to be a big lady because, if you're a big lady with like a strong jawline, everyone's just going to think you're a man. Like, that's not fair. It used to be
She's
that
a
you could
guy.
be like a handsome woman.
It's okay.
You can't be
She
a
looks
handsome
like one.
woman anymore. Now it's like because of trans,
Trans. The trans.
If you aren't obviously feminine looking, you're screwed, and everyone thinks you're a fella.
it's funny because
if you said beautiful man, I feel like you'd imagine like Gaston. You know,
you say beautiful man, you think like Fabio or whatever.
yeah,
like
but he's
some,
still like
man.
a big,
He's
muscular
a big,
dude.
beefy guy. He's
when you
just
think-
like pretty.
But if you think handsome woman, you think like a chiseled jaw woman, who's,
Right.
like large and
Right.
like, like a beautiful man could still be a manly guy, but a handsome woman is a manly woman.
It's a manly woman,
It
and
only
you
flows in
can't-
one direction.
It's not good to be a manly woman now if you want anyone to think that you're actually female.
No, and it's true. I mean, part of what's really fascinating about it too is leftists will blame us for that. We'll blame conservatives for that. But the reality is 15, 20 years ago, masculine-looking women were not suspected
No, you
of
still-
being men.
You still
because
thought
you
they
just
were women.
Exactly.
You
What I'm
might
trying
not
to
think
do
that
is
they were
this
gorgeous,
side.
but you'd be,
I'm
at
gonna
least
do-
you'd
I
think
think
it's
I'm
a
gonna
woman.
do it
I
like
assume
this and
someone
then-
dressed as a woman was a woman.
Was a woman.
Now you can't make that assumption
No.
anymore.
My other hot take, do also think that the normalization and increase in plastic surgery among young women, which in some ways is analogous to what a lot of men get who want to become trans, it's like superimposing the same artificial features.
Yeah.
And I think you get then this like weird kind of amorphous, like genderless.
This bimbo look.
It's
that's
so
a
interesting.
bimbo look.
And they all look the same. Like,
Exactly.
everyone's got
Yeah.
the same lips and stuff.
So this is a
It's like unhuman.
It is
well, I want to
weird.
make a point about them all looking the same. Part of what's so fascinating is the reason we have these plastic surgeries is because we live in this Western liberal society where we've maximalized individualism and allow people to make their own choices. And the hilarious irony is people use those individual freedoms to become as much like everyone else as possible. To literally change the way their face looks, to look more like what society says the average
guys don't
face should
celebrate
ideally
Halloween?
look like.
Which is really just a shame.
And so the
And it's
the
bad
truth
for
is,
everybody
the more
else who's just like,
stringent-
I don't want to have knives on my face.
Yeah, well, and part of what's hilarious about it though is the more stringent and conservative and traditional your social roles are, the more uniqueness you get among people. Because those are societies that's like, no, like you can't slice your face up in the name of self-expression, right? We could do reconstructive surgery if
You
something
can in
horrible
South
happened to you.
Korea, and that's a pretty traditional society, isn't it? I don't really know.
What about South Korea?
In South Korea, there's like a huge
All of them.
proportion
All of them get
of
plastic surgery.
There was actually a man who sued his wife because their children were ugly.
And
it
she
turned
got
out-
well, what I would say
Turned
is
out that he didn't know she'd had all that plastic surgery.
any society that allows for plastic surgery, so long as it's voluntary, has clearly bought into the idea of individualism to the point where they think an individual has the right to change the way that their face looks for non-medically necessary reasons.
Well, sure, and we are there. It's always
Yeah.
interesting to me. Like people will say to me, "Oh, if you're opposed to minors getting trans surgery, then you must be opposed to them getting boob jobs and nose jobs too." And it's like, yeah, for sure.
And to be
So
clear,
bad
though,
for
to
it.
be
I am,
clear, it's worse. To
for
be
sure.
clear, like making someone infertile for the rest of their lives is worse than
It's
giving them a
worse,
plastic nose. But,
like,
yeah, I think
also
both are wrong.
leave your nose alone. I remember when I was like 16, and my my aunt said, she goes, "So when are you gonna get your nose done?" And I was like, "What? What do you mean? What is the matter? I'm not. No one's breaking my nose and reshaping
And
it."
she went, "Well, you're ugly, honey."
No, she didn't say that, but she was like, "What? Doesn't everybody want to do that?" And I was
That's
like,
such a
"No,
horrible thing to say.
no."
Yeah.
I think a lot of this
It's so
stuff
normal.
is downstream
Well, I think that was wrong.
from social
Well,
media.
you know what's funny
too.
is I wasn't upset because she thought that I didn't have a good face. I was just horrified at the notion that someone would break my nose
Yeah.
and
They're
reshape
pushing
it,
that
and that I
on-
would pay for someone to do that
on
for me.
such young girls now. I mean, you get inundated. I'm 23, and it's like all you ever hear is you need to get Botox. You need to get Botox.
No, do nothing.
no,
They call
I
it
would-
preventative
I
Botox.
would-
I've heard about this.
I would never. I think
Yeah.
plastic surgery is for
Yeah.
trannies. But it's wild. It's the normal. I mean, I guess it's profits, but it's just.
The Botox thing is weird. How everyone wants to shoot poison in their face.
Yeah.
Or take out
Or
their
fill your
cheek
body
fat.
with plastic.
It's
That seems
understandable,
very
though. I
weird.
understand why people do it. They're trying to look better and younger.
Doxing yourself
no,
as
no,
a
no, no.
Botox recipient.
I mean, I think
This
the
guy's-
stuff's
this guy's got
gross. I
Botox.
also think it's a gross look on people, but I also think there's something to do with social media, with women comparing themselves to each other at such a young age.
But that was
and then
always
also
true.
different. Well,
Like
was it always true? It wasn't true 50 years ago. It definitely wasn't true as much 50 years ago. And then also the different filters that people could apply to
sure,
themselves.
I mean, all that stuff is worse, but like middle school has always been middle school.
Yeah, but it wasn't. When you went home from middle school 50 years ago, you were home. Now, when you go home from middle school, you're looking at pictures of your classmates on TikTok and Instagram and comparing yourselves to them. I feel like a lot of the stuff we were talking about tonight is downstream. consequence of
Social media is frying the brains of young people.
Yeah.
Not
please.
only young
I
people,
don't think
of
it should be
all
legal. I
people
really
and
don't
media.
think kids should be able to use these platforms. It's
Well,
a
have
shame
you-
that parents allow them to.
have
And
you
technically,
noticed-
their TOS says they shouldn't. But
have you noticed all the commercials for TikTok and Instagram saying that they now have parental controls? Yep.
I haven't seen those.
You can specifically remove words that they won't be able to search for or see if it appears in any way related to the post.
And this is what I will say to any parent who is considering allowing their child to use TikTok because of parental controls. Anyone who produces content will tell you there are certain words you can use as workarounds to communicate the same message, either by putting an asterisk somewhere or spelling a word a little bit differently, and you're just not going to be able to block out all the variations. The reality is, if you're giving your kid a phone that has TikTok on it, they're going to find the stuff that you've put parental controls on it to prevent them from seeing. It's just going to happen. Do not think that stuff
But
is going to protect your
there
kid.
are
You
young
have to
women
protect
who
your
are getting
kid.
plastic surgery to look like filters.
That's really too bad.
Yep.
Well, there's a disconnect when you look in the mirror and what you're used to seeing, and then you're like, wait, I look bad. I need to get X.
Well, it's because they see
done.
other
So it's
women
like-
who look
yeah.
a certain way and they think I should look like that, but it's a filter.
What they should realize, though, is that disconnect never goes away. I mean, I remember my grandma when she was like 86, and she was telling me, honey, I feel the same way as I did when I was 18 on the inside. And then I look in the mirror, and there's this old lady. It's very confusing.
For
wonder
many
what
people, they
Kamala's
see
had
people
done.
more through phones
wonder
than
that
they do
too.
in real
'Cause
life.
It's got to be
I
something.
want to know who her injection.
And then I look at like her neck, and I'm like, she didn't do that yet.
Baby.
Yikes. Commented on her looks? That's,
Sorry.
I thought, unkosher.
But the other
We
component of
already
it,
commented on her looks. We
the
were
other
talking about her
component of it is that
outfits.
young people will see posts from their friends and they're fake and they're highlight reels and they think my life should be that way and they get depressed because of it.
Yeah, that's a shame.
Well, when life is so meaningless, I think it trumps up the importance
Yeah.
of stuff.
No
like that.
purpose.
Well, this is one of the massive issues with materialism. If the only thing that actually matters is what's right in front of you and there's no spiritual reality, if you don't have all of the coolest things on the planet, you're not the most attractive person, you don't have the most money, well, then what's the point of being alive? And then here's the reality is if you have a materialist mindset, even once you get to that point, it doesn't start to feel like
Perfect.
things suddenly matter because you got all the shiny new toys. You just end up remaining depressed. You see this with famous
Yeah,
people
it's
all the
kind of
time. They get
filthy.
addicted to drugs or they end their own lives because you can't satisfy yourself with things
That's
of
why
this world.
Jim Carrey went nuts. And he was like, we're backing off now. But it was interesting. Speaking of meaning, my son was telling me that like most of the kids in his class are atheists.
How old are they?
Well, that's the fault of Christians.
14.
I don't
I
think
mean,
you-
they're 14.
Yeah, I don't think you could have developed.
But he said that they
religious
don't
views of-
tend to go to church.
But this is this.
It's not
this is-
good.
That's,
That's
a
church-
that's a
it's
parenting
Christians' fault.
thing. That's a parenting thing. Like take your,
It's the fault of Christians.
take your kids.
That's
to
part of a
church.
bigger trend, too, over
I
the
think
past
it's just
50 years
so
of
key
church
to take your
attendance
kids to church, like-
falling off of a cliff.
My parents forced me
Although
to go
with
to
young
church.
men,
and
isn't it up? I remember reading.
I think
think
that's
The
a
question, the
narrative.
question
It's
is,
resurged.
why aren't parents instilling their values in their children?
Well,
Why are
because
they
the
letting
parents
their
don't actually believe it? A lot of these parents don't believe
right?
it.
And then why
Well,
did
because
why,
they-
so the grandparents then?
But they,
At what point did people stop instilling their values in their kids?
I remember reading.
I think
The
that's a
question, the
narrative.
question is,
resurged.
why aren't parents instilling their values in their children?
Well,
why are
because
they
the
letting
parents
their
don't actually believe it? A lot of these parents don't believe
right?
it.
And then
Well,
why did
because
why,
they-
so the grandparents then?
but they,
At what point did people stop instilling their values in their kids?
I remember reading.
I remember reading.
I think
The
that's a
question, the
narrative.
question
Where
is,
it's resurged.
why aren't parents?
Like, I'm a young person bucking the system until even now. Like, they even still, the boomers have that mindset.
Well, it's so hilarious too because I cannot think of a more ill-suited group to question the choices of their parents than baby boomers.
Exactly.
The
I think
greatest
that too.
generation, and the greatest generation had a lot of flaws. People worship them, and they shouldn't. But the truth is, the greatest generation went from living through the Great Depression to fighting in and winning the Second World War. And then their children looked at them and said, "What do you know, Mom and Dad? I'm going to go listen to like rock and roll and sleep with strangers and get high."
That's what
You
life's
guys
really
don't know."
about, you
Yeah.
guys.
It's like,
That's
hold
what
on.
life's really for.
Your parents went from the Great Depression to the most prosperous economy in the history of the world at that point over the course of 50
And you
years.
can't stand
so
it.
maybe
So,
those were people who
question-
give you good life advice.
question
They're
for
like,
you,
"No, they're
Amos.
oppressing me."
Right. How many members of the Greatest Generation served overseas?
I don't know the number,
How many Americans served overseas?
but I think
Google
wasn't it something like a
It was
third?
lots.
A third of Americans were involved in the war effort or something. It was
No, but serving. If you want to say like they fought the war, the
Fought.
people who came back as veterans and had a message to instill in their children. I think the issue is the majority of the Greatest Generation actually didn't.
including
Like-
the Fish National Park Service. It's true, but we had an entire war economy. So, like, even right after the suffering of the Great Depression, you had to ration the
My
food that
point
you had,
is,
the
the
rubber.
people who fought in the war, the veterans, probably had a strong message for their children, and their children heard it. But that's about 1/3 of the boomers. That means like 66% told their kids nothing.
Well, and also, what was the media telling their kids? I think that the Greatest Generation.
I have
was
the
not
magazines. Why don't you go
skeptical
read
enough about, huh?
I have the magazines in the other room. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I've seen.
we've actually pulled up several of the World War II Life magazines. On the counter in the green room, we have the Life magazine with the bomber of Japan smoking a cigarette, and it explains how the U.S. nuked Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And then I have the surrounding magazines where you can read what people thought during World War II. And I got to tell you, it had nothing to do with the Holocaust, Germany, or Jews.
Well, we
You
want
know,
to know
the,
something.
that Enola Gay, it's in Chantilly, Virginia. It's in storage there. You can see it
I found
in
years
the
ago
National Air and Space Museum.
when
Very cool.
many years ago I found an old
It's a little
suitcase that used
thin,
to belong to
not
my
to
late grandfather.
Thicken a little bit.
And I went in it, and there was a Reader's Digest, and it was from the 40s. I believe it was Reader's Digest, and there was a chapter in there. It said Catholics fight birth control, or Catholics fight legal birth control. And I said, I didn't know that was an issue back then. My dad was like, they're talking about condoms. Like Catholics were fighting. It was true. And so what I find hilarious is you'll have these lefty social justice advocates who say, you guys are Nazis and fascists. It's like, dude, the Catholic guys fighting in World War II were against condom legalization in many cases. Like, they would be so far right by your standards.
They could be even more right.
But we have to remember this too. The Greatest Generation had a lot of its own problems. The World War II soldiers, some of them, when they were in France, were, going to brothels over in Europe. I mean, it's not like they were perfect people.
So that's the worst thing you have to say about him?
No.
Yes, not too bad if that's during wartime. Hey.
Is that it?
Oh, well, no, I'm just saying that the Greatest Generation raised the boomers, even though I have a tremendous amount of respect and admiration for the men who fought in World War II, including my grandfather. They were humans. They made mistakes. They didn't raise perfect children. Nobody does. And so we have to remember that, too.
There was a big percentage, though, of the boomers that ended up fighting overseas as well. It's just that they were fighting in Vietnam. And you have to remember about Vietnam, that was the first war that was basically televised.
Yeah.
Because you had reporters on the battlefield, and those images were coming home. And there were a lot of people who were supporting the Vietnam War, too. I mean, we look back at it and we say everybody hated it and it was terrible, but there was a lot of support among Americans for that war as well.
In my dad's high school, they played the draft numbers through the intercom every morning.
Yeah.
Ooh, and the teachers or students who were
Did your
getting
dad's
drafted.
number come
All
up?
right, everybody.
No,
we're
he didn't end up having to.
We're going to go to Super Chat, so smash the like button, subscribe, share the show with everyone you know. Leave us a good review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your audio podcasts, and become a member at timcast.com, because we're going to have a members-only call-in show coming up at 10 p.m. That's right. You as members can call in and talk to us, and we'll answer your questions. But for now, let's grab the Super Chat. We got Kyle who says, Seamus, have you seen the Tim Waltz Mr. Garrison meme yet? It's astonishing how great cartoonists are at predicting future outcomes.
Thank you. No, I saw that. Thank you for complimenting my profession, by the way. But not to.
It's rare, isn't it?
Yeah, it is rare that that cartoonists get complimented or get anything right. But Tim Walz does have that vibe. I saw that and I thought it was hilarious. I did see that. Good meme.
All right, let's grab some more Super Chats. what is this? AJ Borowski. You'll know they've accepted defeat when they allow the wars to truly start. They will absolutely leave a mess for Trump once they know they are hopeless. Yeah.
Well, they're sending money all over the place, and it's usually the State Department or some random person making the announcement. Hey, we're taking your money.
Zarosifer says, Tim, you are wrong about the airlines kicking off for shirt from earlier. The airlines take federal funds. You take federal funds, you don't get to ban political messages. It wasn't a ban on political messages. It was a ban on obscene messages. So a couple months ago, a guy got kicked off because it said Hawk Tua spit on that thing with Donald Trump flipping a bird. They said, you got to flip that inside out. He says, okay. Flips it inside out, sits down, flips it right side out, and they said, okay, well, WTF, mate, you got to get off the plane now. And he's all like, oh, how dare you, blah, blah, blah. There's another video a couple years ago where a guy had an F. Biden shirt on, and they said, you can't wear that on here. And he's like, I've got free speech, how dare you? And I'm like, dude, you don't own these planes. These are private companies. And so the argument being made by Zarosifer is that they receive federal funds. I don't agree with that. It wasn't a political message that they were saying no to. It was obscene messages. And I have no problem with a plane, an airline being like, we don't want people fighting in the sky.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because that would be bad for security.
Or the plane could crash.
That's exactly.
No fighting in the sky. Everybody's got to chill. All right. Lauren says, what happened to your morning show? I loved it. Well, it's still there, but it's broken up into segments again. Yeah. That's it. Tried the live stream out for a couple months, started the RNC, and ultimately I think it doesn't work, and YouTube punishes you for doing it, so I switched back to doing segments. So now there are just segments instead of a 2-hour live show. Veteran Biker says, invite a veteran with a YouTube channel on. Yes. Haven't we?
Probably.
Honey, I think yesterday we had Joel Berry. He was a Marine.
Yeah, that's right. Great show.
Well, there you go. The real Doug Lane says, holy smokes, Lucifer is literally running for president in Utah on the official ballot. Not a joke. Is that true?
Weird.
Someone want to look that up?
And what state was it?
Utah. Mr. Nice Bobby says, Tim, you keep talking about Star Trek and praising it, but when are you going to watch the true king of 90s sci-fi, Babylon 5? If you can only watch one episode, watch Season 4, Episode 8, The Illusion of Truth. Oh, interesting.
Lucifer Every Love.
Really?
His name is Just In Case.
His name
or
is...
I don't know. No. It's Lucifer Just In Case Every Love.
Yeah, Lucifer Just In Case Every Love. But his friends just call him Lucy. He's a real candidate. He's only running in Utah, even though he primarily lives in New Hampshire and spends half his time in Utah. The ballot's not fake. It's a real ballot. Everybody has to meet the criteria to be a candidate.
Peter
This
Goax.
individual did that.
Peter Goax says, Tim, you were great on Piers Morgan. Seemed like your mic got shut down every time someone else talked, like a connection issue. The leftists on that show were literally the definition of fake news. Indeed, they were. Indeed. Yeah. There was something on their end where whenever someone would talk, my mic would get turned off or whatever. That was their issue.
Super convenient. You're the only one getting muted.
Yep. Let's see. Ego says, early voting in North Carolina started today. Go vote. Also, if you needed a real estate agent in North Carolina, call Carolina Sapphire Realty. Tim and crew, we love y'all. Hey, appreciate it. Ham Sandwich says, Seamus, my acquired a lot of spoons this visit. His power level the last 2 days has been epic.
Thank you so much. I'm glad. Listen, I don't appreciate the accusation, but I'm glad that you think that my power level has been high. And if you want to see how that's manifesting, go over to Freedom Tunes and watch our newest video.
This guy couldn't even get 1 million subs last night.
Oh, why do you have to treat me like this? Why do I go on this show when I'm spoken to this way? Hold on. Let's see what our numbers are at right now.
What if it went down?
Let's get Freedom Tunes up to 1 million subscribers tonight to make Tim cry. If you want to see Tim cry on air, get us 2 million. We're at 977,000 right now. We can do that. We can make Tim
5,
cry.
That's 5,000.
We gained 5,000.
That's a lot.
So
That's
do I get a single tier for that?
No.
Okay, well.
No, but I'll order pizza for others.
For you and others.
Seamus will get pizza and others.
Seamus will get others.
Seamus will get others. Your local wizard says, Seamus, don't allow Tim to slander the Irish with the spoon conspiracy. Also, do you believe that Cain is still out there wandering the earth?
Firstly, I will not let Tim continue to slander us, and I have done everything in my power to.
Well, I'm Irish too, bro.
Yeah, and yet the way you speak about your people, you're a race traitor. But I would say, as far as Cain still wandering the earth, that's not. I've heard that that's something that some people believe. That's not something that I was taught as a Catholic. I don't know that Catholics typically believe that. I certainly wasn't taught that as a child.
He's a bad dude, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he killed his brother.
Killed his brother.
Yeah,
And then
killed his
God
brother.
came down and was like, "Where's your brother?" And he was like, "Am I my brother's keeper?" No.
And he was like pushing the body behind a rock while he was saying it.
Yeah, he was just like, "I haven't seen that fella."
Well, yeah, and so he was marked so that people would know not to kill him. And some people
And
have
not to hang
interpreted
out with
that.
him.
Well, some people have interpreted that as him being unable to die, but I don't think the text. I don't believe the text
I don't
says
think
that.
that's
Yeah.
supported.
I think
biblically.
I think
But
we're
some
like
believe that. And what also the flood happened after. So he would have to have gotten on the ark or been sustained in some
He
other
didn't
way.
get on that ark.
Yeah.
No one would have let him on that.
he did it. He was lying on his back floating.
No, I mean
40 days and
he-
40 nights.
You know, people lived for a long time in the Old Testament, but I'm pretty sure Cain kicked it at some point.
I don't know, man. You ever see that show Lucifer?
That
I've never
I
seen
do
Lucifer.
Not like that
He was a
show.
detective.
Yep. I watch all the dumb fantasy shows
Like, what's
for
this?
sure.
Dude,
I have
it's
watched
so
that.
funny. It's like he's the devil and a detective solving crimes. Like,
And he's in love with that, and he's in
pitched
love with the
this?
other. He's in love with one of the detectives. And
yeah,
I think
I'm
it's
just
just, you
like,
got to be edgy and you have to insult Christianity somehow and try to subvert
But, like,
traditional morals. So
I mean, an immortal Cain TV show would probably work. You know, it starts with
the thing, though,
Cain,
they
Abel,
would
and
never
then
show. Though what they wouldn't show is that Cain is a horrible brute who is not capable of.
nah, they'd make him
redemption.
sympathetic.
exactly.
They would.
that's-
They would
Exactly,
show, they would show Abel
exactly.
doing something
That's
to
why
him.
It's like not.
Well, no, because it's a story of envy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? God appreciated Abel's sacrifice because he really gave. So in some sense, Cain was like one of the first communists. he went and killed somebody for
Hollywood-
giving more to
Equity.
God.
For
Hollywood would
yeah.
make him a hero.
Yeah, exactly. Hollywood would make him a hero.
They would make God the bad guy.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
They would have made it out to be like God was favoring the privilege of Abel.
Exactly.
And when
Cain
Cain-
would literally say, "Actually, I can't commit fratricide because fratricide is killing your brother plus institutional power, and I lacked the institutional power because I was suffering from sacrifice scarcity. I just didn't have enough to give to this sacrifice, so it's not my fault."
But they would literally make it the show where he's like, "Father, why won't you praise me? I have done everything." And then he's like, "Get away." And he's like, "Ah." And then, fight breaks out. And then he's like, "What have I done?" And then God's like, "You are banished. You will never die." And then they make him a detective.
You know what?
And then he's like living in New York and he's solving crimes.
That is literally what they would do. That is literally what they would do.
They made a show where Lucifer is a detective solving crimes.
Yeah.
It's insane.
And like his brother is there, who's like another fallen angel,
Right.
and then there's like some succubus.
And then some
Does
guy
he
stole his
have-
wings.
Yeah.
In this show, does he have demonic powers?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
So what is he trying
He
to
can
figure
compel
out?
people.
Did he compel? Yeah, what is he trying to figure out? Because
Can't he compel people to act upon their dark desires or something like that?
Yeah, he's not a good guy, but he's like trying to be a good guy. They make him sympathetic.
theologically confused. So
he's like-
Theologically,
and he's
it
British.
does not work.
He's British.
well, now that makes sense. That actually adds up. To
That's
be
the only
honest,
thing that's canon.
That's the only thing about that I think makes some sense.
All right, Adrienne Curry says, "Women won't vote for women. Who is the leader of a home? Women? LOL." Hey, a woman said it. She's allowed. You know what I mean? Those are the rules, right? Like
A woman's not
you know,
supposed to be.
The best thing about being multiracial and multi-ethnic is I can make fun of French, British, Irish, German, Koreans,
Well,
Japanese.
firstly, everyone can make fun of the French.
It's
That's
not
true.
hard. Yeah.
No one gets in trouble for that one. That's like one group we've all just decided that, but it's also because they're white.
Is that? But yeah, but everyone kind of agrees with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you get to a point where it's like,
Someone's
hey,
don't say that about them.
well, because it's like you might get some dude and he's like, I'm really tired of the white self-hating jokes. Like, no, he was French. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's not
like,
bad.
oh, okay, I get it. What are the cheese-eating surrender monkeys? What was
I
that?
think
from?
Groundskeeper Willie says that.
Yeah, cheese-eating surrender monkeys.
Classic Simpsons is so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Unit says, Seamus, please do a cartoon where Tim says Civil War too many times, goes nuts, and HC tries to cover for Timcast, which leads to the chicken revolts, and they create a new nation and constitution.
Yeah, but it would be hacky because that already happened in real life. I can't just copy something.
I think for our
That's happened.
the music video we're working on, it's going to be aliens turn everyone into zombies, and then chickens fight to save the Earth from the aliens.
By the way, I was being deadpan. I appreciate your super chat and the joke.
All right, let's go. This one is from Joe Disson. He says, Biden says, by the way, the camera is looking at me. He's looking straight in the lens. Then Obama says something before looking at the camera himself. I think that's right. I'm pretty sure he taps him and says, by the way. And then maybe he did say, he's like, the camera's pointing at us or looking at me. And then Obama says something like, okay, because they know. And now it's a huge story. What did they say? What if it was something like Joe was like, Kamala makes great Cajun casserole. And Obama goes, nope. Gives me the Hershey squirts.
It's horrible. It's horrible. Joe Biden was like, I heard she washes her collard greens in a bathtub, man.
She said that, right?
Yeah, and Barack's like, nope.
But what was the story? Like she said she washed her collard greens in the bathtub as a slang term?
Yeah, because she...
What do you mean?
This
as a
is
slang
my
term?
understanding
I thought
of
she
this.
just had too many greens.
No, so she...
And she didn't have anywhere to wash them.
So she claimed that she washed them in a bathtub. Now this is, I am not an expert here, but my understanding is that there was some slang that she had heard used in the black community that she misappropriated and misunderstood. Like they would say they washed their collard greens in a tub. They would call it a tub, but it wasn't a literal bathtub. It was not. But she heard that when I used to wash my collard greens in a bathtub, and people were like, "What are you talking about? That's weird."
Yeah, I just thought. I heard that, and I thought, I guess she must have had like a lot of greens that she had to wash.
She just
that
had
was
so
my
many
thought.
greens.
She just had like a huge, like a monster amount of greens.
That's a lot. That's too many.
Too many.
All right, we got this next one from Trey Wooble. Says, Seamus, I didn't notice the ring before I burned you so hard yesterday. I hoped your wife didn't see that part, but alas, AI is immediately aware of all the things posted on the internet. My apologies.
Oh yeah, he said I'd never talked to him. I mean, look, it was a valid fact check.
Let's see. What is this one? This one's from Mr. Commutunes. Seamus is not smart, and he will never reach 1 million subscribers. Ha 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 ha.
Prove him wrong. Prove him wrong, everybody. Prove him wrong. Go over to youtube.com/freedomtunes. That's TOONS and subscribe. We're at 977,000 subscribers. We're getting so close I can taste it.
Seamus, I made that up. There's no comment.
I know, but I was leaning into it because I want. Maybe we will become Commutunes if we don't get to 1 million subs. I'll be like, why do other people have 1 million subscribers and I don't? Clearly, the economy is broken.
Why don't you make Commutunes?
We've talked about this. This is a bit that you and I have talked about.
Commutunes?
Yeah, do you remember that?
I don't know.
I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to spoil it.
I was saying, like, make a whole new channel and then just do really awful, like...
Just long text. Just really long text that scrolls
Bro,
over
you
stick
should make
figures.
that. And it's just 3 minutes of super long text.
Honestly, I might.
All right, Michael Bomber says, Polymarket has Trump at 62%. I really hope Joe Rogan accepts a podcast with Kamala. Polymarket will have Trump at 99.9 the next day.
Do you think
Indeed.
Rogan's going to do it? The podcast with both of them?
He never said anything.
He'd have to do it with both.
I agree, but the thing is, Rogan. So Brett Baer didn't even push back that much, as we discussed earlier. I don't know that Rogan would push back even as much as Brett Baer did.
Oh, I don't know that he would.
You think so?
But you'd want to see both.
Bro, like, Joe, an interview with Joe is not like a Brett Baer who's trying to be on the level. The left attacks him, but Joe is the kind of guy who's going to go, what are you saying? Like, I asked you a question. There's a few guests I can reference who I won't bring up, but Joe was just like, what are you talking about? That's ridiculous. Pull it up. And they're like...
Can you imagine what that would do to her campaign? If it just that one clip. Like, what? What are you talking about? Him Googling and her being wrong?
Although there was a really funny meme that I saw where someone wrote out... Let me see if I can find it because reading it's absolutely hilarious. Let me see if I can find this one. Seamus, read a super chat or something.
You want me to find a super chat for you? All right, let me
just
go
read it because I'm trying to find. I'm trying to find this really funny thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me just pull this up. Okay, we got a super chat here. This is the best time for my internet to fail. It's just taking 2 seconds to pull up. Beautiful. Lance DeBoer said, "That's it. I'm subbing to the Irishman." Was it because of
reading things that promote yourself?
No, that was the first thing that came up. Isn't that interesting, Tim? Turns out the people here like me. They're not as rude to me as you are.
Oh, I'm going to subscribe.
Yeah, please. You weren't subscribed?
I wasn't. My son is subscribed, and he shows me your videos, but I was not subscribed.
That's very sweet.
Yeah. He thinks you're funny.
I'm glad that somebody does. I'm glad that somebody does. I'm just going to have to drive you guys over to Freedom Tunes. I only have 2 super chats on my screen right now. So that's where we're at. Let me see some other things. Someone said, Seamus, now is the time. Get him back. Get him back in what way? What are you guys asking me to do here?
Who?
What?
Were they talking about?
I assume get you back for the way that you've been treating me.
Oh, I can't find this meme. That's too bad. It was really good. Someone wrote a script of what they thought a Kamala Harris-Rogan interview would sound like.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it was really funny. It was really funny. I don't think that's what it would sound like. But, you know, that's too bad. Too bad. Sorry, everybody. No jokes for you. I tried. Tried my best.
Tried really hard. Nice. Yes, our subs are up. Thank you guys.
What are you
Keep
at?
doing it. Keep doing it. We've gained like over 100. About 200 now. Come on,
wow,
guys.
that's
We got to
200.
do
That's
this.
a very big
Let's
number,
get it here.
Camus.
By the way, I'm not just asking you to come sub for no reason. We put out a new video today. People seem to be liking it. The audience
Yeah.
really seems to be liking it.
Yeah, but, you know, aren't you kind of mean to Kamala?
Yeah, I guess if there's one weakness, there's one weak point of that video, it's that I do make fun of Kamala Harris, which I think would upset you guys. So
Is this the Kamala Robotron one?
yeah, yes. Don't
is funny.
spoil it, Libby. Yes, we did a video on Kamala's new campaign strategy, her best hope of winning.
All right. Official Lucid Traveler says you are all under deliberate attack from your own government, which is occupied by foreign governments, and your intelligence agencies. Prepare yourselves. Find Christ. Water, food, ammo, and a Bible. Good luck. Heavens. North Libertarian says truth is treason in the empire of lies. Dr. Ron Paul.
Amen.
Oof. Particle Ghost says, Tim, I voted today in North Carolina and took the Democrat candidate list so I know who not to vote for. I'm wondering how many picked one up and was marked as a supporter when we are not. It was packed all day. Interesting. Oh, yeah, Kamala Harris skipped the Al Smith dinner tonight.
She did send a pre-recorded message.
Yeah, but this
and
is
she
like...
was booed.
Was she really?
Yeah.
Where was this?
Whoa,
The Al Smith
she got
dinner.
booed.
Her pre-recorded message got booed.
Wow.
If I'm to believe the chatter in the chats.
Whoa,
It is.
crazy.
Listen, I completely and totally understand why she's as disliked as she is, but it's really remarkable. I mean, I remember in 2016 when the popular brave thing to say was that you didn't like Donald Trump, but I don't remember people being this tired of him or this annoyed with him. There's a lot of people who don't like him, don't get me wrong, but Kamala is someone the media is constantly telling us we should love and is great for this country, and it just hasn't taken. She literally has the entire mainstream media behind her pushing for her candidacy, and people still really don't like her. I mean, and I've never seen anything like it. I've really never seen anything like it. With pretty much every other Democratic candidate of my lifetime, except for Hillary Clinton, I will say, except for Hillary Clinton, the media has been able to kind of manufacture some kind of consensus around people liking them, but not with these two, and I think it's because America's sexist and they're women.
Well, also, though, Kamala Harris only had 3% of the vote when she was running as a Democratic presidential
Three?
candidate.
She did horrible in the
That's a big
primary.
number.
In
She really did
2019, she had 3%.
Yeah, she did. She really did not do well.
She
in
did
the
not do
primaries.
well. She
That's the
dropped
first
out
question I would
before
have for
Iowa,
Kamala.
right?
I would say, Kamala, did you know you had 3%? Can you say 3?
Can you show me how many that is? What
Honestly,
percentage did you get? She's like,
the
this
first-
many? I got this many.
The first question I would actually ask Kamala Harris is, if you didn't have breakfast yesterday, how would you have felt?
I think that would have been a good question.
And she would say, I was raised in a middle class family. She'd say, well, let's talk about Donald Trump's breakfast this morning.
No, she would literally be like, breakfast. You know, a lot of Americans, they want to talk about breakfast. And you know what I'm going to say? Because breakfast is an important meal. And a lot of people in this country have very,
But ma'am, we're asking what you had for breakfast.
And if you let me finish, I'm talking right now. And, you know, there's a lot of people who are wondering the same question about what they're having for breakfast. So I think, you know, I'm glad you brought it up. And thank you for the question.
That's literally true. She will just go. She will just not answer it.
That's what she did. And then Brett Baer was like, please, can I have a number?
My favorite part was when she was like, I'm trying to get to the point. It's like, what? No, you're not.
I literally would have said, if I was Brett Baer, ask the question. And then I would just let her talk. And then once she stopped talking, I would say, can you answer the question?
How many illegal immigrants?
No, I just say, can you answer the question? Like I did. I'd be like, oh, I'm sorry. The question was how many illegal immigrants? And then when she doesn't give an answer, I'll be like, I'm confused. Wait, can you?
Do you want to answer it again?
Do you want to? No, you didn't give me a number. And then just let that be the whole interview. And then they're going to be like, Brett should have asked this question. I'm like, well, I don't know. Kamala wasn't answering. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah, honestly, no, that would have been hilarious if he tried that twice and then his follow-up was, how would you feel if you didn't have breakfast this morning?
Yesterday morning.
Yeah, yes. Is it this morning, yesterday morning?
Yesterday. It's how would you have felt if you did not eat breakfast yesterday? Yeah. And then they go, but...
Well, the correct answer is, but I did. Yeah, you're supposed to say, but I did eat breakfast. That's the right answer. So we'll see.
I don't agree
We'll
with...
see if she would answer that.
I don't agree with hungry. Some people don't eat breakfast. Like there was a period where I didn't eat breakfast at all, and I'd be like, but I don't eat breakfast at all. I would feel the exact same.
I would feel unburdened by what was.
So you don't think that like the first meal of the day is just breakfast? I mean, you're breaking.
What
your
happened to the
fast
other girl?
If you eat at 8 a.m.
Interesting.
or you eat at 1 p.m.
So you think dinner can be breakfast if you wait till 6
Yeah,
o'clock?
see, now you're getting. If someone today, I every day I have a 2-egg goat cheese omelet. That's what I eat literally every single day.
Do you put spinach in it? Little onions? Really?
I put olive oil in the eggs, whip it up, splash a little olive oil in the pan, 2 eggs, goat cheese, put some avocado on top.
I like avocado on my omelets
Healthy.
too. Just right.
And I have
on
a protein
top.
shake.
Mhm.
And if I don't have that, I mostly would just feel fine until around noon or so, and then I'd be like, oh, I gotta eat.
Yeah, I have my whole day gets all whatever. So annoying.
Here's a question for you,
It all
Seamus.
gets screwed up.
If you did not
every day.
release a cartoon about Kamala Harris as a robot, how would you have felt?
But I did release a cartoon about Kamala's robot today. I did do that.
All right. Ghost Crusader says, Tim, can you ask Libby if she ever remembers seeing Democratic presidential campaign ads playing on New York TV in the past? I don't recall seeing any for presidential elections, but this time I see 4 or 5 Kamala ads every morning.
I don't remember that, but I never had TV.
Oh, no TV, huh?
No. I do remember when I was a kid and my mom had cable and there were still only 5 channels, but it was the only way to get reception. And the clicker like didn't even have numbers on it. You just had to go like back and forth and it had volume. But I don't remember anything other than her making me watch what was then called the McNeil-Lehrer News Hour, which she always made me watch. But no, I didn't have TV.
Lighthouse Film says Gallup has Republicans up 7 points in the popular vote. This is unprecedented.
What?
It's the single most accurate predictor by party registration. Yeah, the Gallup tracking the biggest issue among voters, and they ask 2 questions. What is the biggest issue, and which party do you think has a better handle on it? It has accurately predicted the presidency since 1952. This time around, it is the economy and immigration, and those polled said the Republican Party has a better handle on it. So the Gallup isn't making a formal prediction. They're just showing the polls, but if you track the poll all the way back, you're like, oh, wow, look at that.
That is interesting that he's seeing Are you seeing that a lot? Are you seeing Democratic political ads on TV in New York?
I also don't have cable
You also
TV.
don't have.
So
It's super
I do
expensive
get a lot
to
of
have
I do
cable
get a
TV
lot
in
of
New York.
mailers though.
Yeah.
In the mail, they do.
I used to have people knocking on my door, and I'd be like, "I'm a Republican," and they'd be shocked and horrified.
So, here's one. Caboose says the $425 million isn't money. It's old shell, missiles, and other equipment bought in the 80s, 90s that is valued at $425 million. And we can't send those to the Helene victims? Maybe they want a missile. You know what I mean?
Also the point, I mean, those are still
we
resources.
can't even send like. I thought we had a whole plan going for a while to do like shipping container.
I got to be honest.
housing.
I got to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather give the shells and the missiles to the Helene victims than Ukraine.
Well, also, there's 2
Well, they
points
could
to
just
make
sell
there.
them on
'Cause
eBay
this
to
is-
North Korea and get some housing.
Well, this is the argument that leftists will make, and even like establishment liberal types. They'll say, well, we're actually sending equipment over there. It's not all just raw money. Okay, firstly, sending equipment over there isn't free. That's our equipment that we are giving away. But also, it's not like it magically appears over there. We have to spend the money relocating all of that too.
Well,
And
wouldn't that make it
remember-
a stimulus then? If it's just it's military equipment from our military industrial complex, right? This is going to jobs in different people's districts. So when we send them that equipment, we're going to have to rearm ourselves. And so this
I mean,
is
it would be a stimulus as well by that logic to go pay people to help those in North Carolina.
Sure, I guess the things aren't completely related, I guess is the point though, right? Like these aren't
But
they're not mutually exclusive at all. They're not related at all.
They don't have to be.
It's just a
mutually
good partisan
exclusive, but
thing
it's
to be like.
but it makes
when
sense
the government
for people
does
to say,
anything, why didn't you
yes.
do this too?
But it makes sense to say, why is the government so invested in giving money and resources and equipment away to foreign countries and not in helping its own people?
Well, it does help its own people. Most of our budget goes to spending on our own people. Most doesn't go to helping foreign countries.
Okay, last question before
Well,
we
hold
wrap.
on a second. I want to respond to that. You're correct that a lot of our budget does, but when people see a response to a disaster botched, when virtually everyone can agree that one of the basic duties of a federal government, if we're going to have one, is to do something like that, but we see the government readily send money to foreign countries, even though that's something that's pretty controversial among the population, I think it's reasonable to say our government is not actually
It's not
acting
nearly
in
as
accordance with
controversial
the
as
will
we
of the
we're going to
people.
wrap it up. We're going to wrap it up. I have one last question because we do have to go. Seamus,
Oh, no.
what if The government said, Seamus, we're going to give $425 million to Ukraine, but every Ukrainian will subscribe to Freedom Tunes.
Every single Ukrainian?
Every single one. How many is like 30 million? No, not anymore. Way less than that.
So I don't think it's as controversial as people think that we should fund Ukraine. I don't think it's as controversial as people think. And I think we can send some of that money.
All right, everybody, smash the like button, subscribe, share the show with everyone you know. Leave us a good review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. Follow me on X and Instagram at TimCast. Head over to timcast.com. Click join us. Become a member. Support our work directly because that members-only show is coming up in about a minute, and we're going to have a good, not-so-family-friendly show for you guys where you as members get to call in. Natalie, do you want to shout anything out?
Steve Bannon is free on the 29th, so make sure you're watching War Room.
Is there going to be a party?
I don't know. We're in the midst of planning it, but I'm sure it'll be a fiery opening rant.
Oh, that will be exciting.
Right?
I'm looking forward to that. I'm Libby Emmons. You can check out what we're doing at thepostmillennial.com and humanevents.com. You can sign up for my newsletter, which is not as exciting as Freedom Tunes. But I do write it up every day, and it's thepostmillennial.com/Libby, or you can find me on Twitter at Libby Emmons.
Well, you heard it right from her. Freedom Tunes is more exciting than her newsletter.
It's
Go
the
over
truth.
to Freedom Tunes and subscribe. No, thank you for saying that. It's very sweet of you. Subscribe to Libby's newsletter. Also, please go subscribe to Freedom Tunes so we can get to 1 million. Watch our newest video where we're making fun of Kamala Harris. I think you guys are going to love it.
I'm Alad Eliyahu. You can find me by that on all platforms, and let's do the after show.
We'll see you all over at timcast.com in about 1 minute. Thanks for hanging out.
If you've got a 3D printer, you can choose between hundreds of different filaments with all kinds of different properties. From tough as nails to fluffy as a cloud, rock solid to floppier than a rubber band. I've tried over 300 filaments so far, but which ones should you have in your workshop? Let's sort the cash from the trash and find the spools that rule today at Voidstar Lab. Ladies, gentlemen, and
You owe them an apology, is what I'm
I
saying.
will tell you that I am so sorry for her loss. I'm so sorry for her loss. No. Sincerely.
This bitch is so stupid.
But let's talk about what is happening right
Let's
now.
not talk
with
about someone's death.
An
Let's
individual
just talk
who does
about.
not want to participate in solutions. Let's talk about that as well.
But do you want to answer
in all fairness, I told you I feel awful for what she and her family have experienced.
During that time.
And
go ahead, pause, go ahead. When you say the word but, it negates everything you said before. I feel sorry for this woman. But let's discard everything I just said because we're going to focus on Donald Trump. Yeah. By the way, the same border security bill that they're saying Trump tanked and didn't want the Republicans to fix, the reason why was because it also included $60 billion to fund the war in Ukraine. So maybe they have a problem with us continuing to fund foreign wars, and they filled that bill with, what do they call it, pork? It was a pork-filled bill, which is why the Republicans didn't want it passed. And the reason why it was filled with pork was because of the Democrats.
Yeah, and Bob, great point, which I had this put up on my phone. I want everybody at home, okay, who is on the fence, that doesn't, that kind of is like, wait a minute, he did turn it down. Let me explain to you, Rob just made a great point. That border bill that these talking losers, these talking heads keep saying, well, we gave them a bill. Karine Jean-Pierre said it too. We had a bill to close the border, and none of these people would have been killed and raped and murdered and taken your jobs. That border bill included $60 billion to Ukraine, including Israel and Taiwan. Ready for this? Codify, catch, and release. Let in 1.8 more illegal immigrants. Fund sanctuary cities. Fund NGO moving illegals. Lawyers to illegals. Work permits to illegals. Nothing to deport illegals. No immediate wall funds. Weak asylum screening and all the money to Ukraine. So when they're like, hey, we want to close the border, but Trump said no. Bullshit. Okay? It's bullshit. Okay? Trump told them, don't give in because what? to close the border, we have to do all this shit to the people that are already here that are going to vote Democrat. Absolutely not. I'm 100%. What do you think, Tom?
It's absurd, right? It's absolutely absurd. You know, she happens to think that the voters are dumb enough to believe what she's saying. That is the only logical explanation out of it. It's hubris. It's cocky. It's arrogant. It's insulting to the average voter that can't simply look up and see, wait a minute, you guys were there. So now you're going to say that you worked so hard to get the presidency only to say, oh, I can't do crap because it's Congress. So you're basically saying that you're just a gelding, you're a horse that's become castrated, you can do nothing. Then why are you running so hard for the position? And why aren't you running for staying in the Senate? Why don't you stay in the House of Representatives if you've got all this power?
Yeah.
You know, oh, Congress, that's the way the system works, Brett. You can't have it both ways, woman.
Yep.
Damn. Well, look, I really enjoy being a part of what I sometimes call the Trump circle jerks, but I'm going to push back on all you guys right now.
This wasn't a trickle jerk. We're just
Little
putting
bit.
her, we're keeping her on her bullshit.
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
And this is
Adam, that's a heck of a preamble. Where are you going?
Yeah.
This is where I'm going with this. Again, two things can be true at once. I find her annoying. I'm not voting for her. But at the same time, you got to give her at least a little bit of credit on going on Fox News. She's realizing, like, oh, my God, my sugar high's done. You know, I was coronated. Nobody elected me in terms of being president. I get the VP on the ticket. I get it. She went on Fox News. She's getting better. Don't look now. This is not the same lady that was like, if you do podcast number 1 to podcast, you're almost on number 100. How much better are you at podcasting, hosting this podcast on podcast 91 now?
On top of all the PvP
Okay.
podcast. Yeah, for sure.
How much better are you?
I'm way better.
So the point is she's going to be getting better. And thank goodness for Trump that she doesn't have 6 months of doing media campaign. She's only been doing this for 2 months. I mean, as the job.
No, man, she
And
still
she's slowly but
sucks. What
surely
are you
getting
talking
better.
about, dude?
But is it going to be enough to get her over the top? Just think about it. Trump has been doing media for 10 years in terms of candidacy, but 40 years, he's media savvy. He knows how to play the game. She's just learning how to play this game.
Well, that's
I'm
terrible.
just saying.
She's been in politics
But
since
not
2016.
No. Okay, you don't think there's a little bit of difference, but scrutiny in the spotlight between a attorney general or a congresswoman or a senator or a vice president versus the president? Come on, bro. So she's sitting in this spotlight for the first time ever.
But you also
and
want to
she's
give her
finding her
credit
comfort
for
zone.
doing something she should.
I'm
be
giving
doing,
her
but she's doing
zero. Listen, I'm giving her zero credit for the open border, for the disaster, for the fact that she's equivocating Hamas to Israel. There's so many things to complain about.
Yes.
But it's undeniable. She's
giving her zero
actually
credit.
getting.
You mean you're giving
she's
her full
actually
blame?
getting a little bit better.
Okay, but
Okay, it's the same rationalization of someone who hates Trump, and you can't say, well, give him at least a little bit of credit for unemployment and inflation. No, he's the devil. It's like, all right, well, then you're not rational.
Okay, well,
You have zero ability to applaud and criticize both sides. I have a unique ability to be like, Trump's good here. She sucks here. Trump's not that good here. I don't know. So that's what I'm saying, the Trump circle jerker. We just want to go around and say she's bad and he's the best ever.
Well, that's
we
why,
can do that.
Well, that's why I disagree.
But it's nuanced.
But the Trump circle jerk, that statement has nothing to do with that. With this.
No, it has to do with this.
No. But hold on. I don't know how you equivocate that to us seeing an interview, which, mind you, we were in awe yesterday, saying, why in God's name? Okay, why in God's name, as a tactics point of view, would they or her team, her handlers, the people that tell Biden what to do are the same people with her? She's a freaking puppet. Why would you agree this late in the game, Adam, to go on Fox? You know what Brett Baer is going to do. He's not giving you the questions. This is raw dog out in the open. Why would you agree to that? It's almost as if you want her to fail because, Adam, they know who she is.
Who wants her to fail?
Hold on. Let me finish.
Yeah.
Why in God's name would you, as Kamala's team, let her go like this, raw, unscripted, when you know, Adam, this isn't a secret. She's not smart. Hold on. She has zero policies. This guy was going to push her. Why would you push her out there into the open? It's almost as if when they put Biden out in front of Trump, they knew this disaster was going to come. They knew he was going to eat him alive because Biden he's been cooked for 3 years.
So what's your point?
My point is you're acting as, oh, she stood her ground and you saw the good points. I didn't see that. I saw somebody that was ill-prepared, had zero policy, had nothing to talk about, and just showed her bitterness, and she was in the Trump circle jerk because everything she said went back to Trump. Actually, Connor, go to that video. Is that video that I sent Kelly in here where it's like Trump dancing? Keep going down.
Are you saying that her team
down lower
wants her to lose, so they set her up?
I don't know.
Put
Why
her on
would you?
Fox News?
Why would you put her out there?
Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't know because why? By the way,
I'm asking a genuine question. What are you saying? That she shouldn't have gone on to Fox News?
I'm saying this.
Trump goes on CNN.
I'm saying no.
Trump,
Adam,
you go into enemy
you
territory.
Asked me a question. If I was
play
her
away
team,
games. That's
if
how it
I was
works.
her team, 1,000%, I would have said we're not doing this. How about this? It wouldn't even have come to that because how did this help her? Did this help her? This lane the game. Hold on. With Biden, you keep him in the basement. You kept that loser pervert in the basement.
I fully disagree. I think you listen. Enough of preaching to the choir. You have to go convert people. That's why Trump is so good.
Did she convert
Because he'll go. I don't know.
I don't think so.
But maybe.
No.
Because the Fox viewers are not necessarily voting for Kamala. But maybe she gets a couple women, the Nikki Haley voters, older women. I don't know. There's strategy to it. To me, it's intellectually lazy to be like, her team wants her to lose, so they put her on Fox. That's it.
Adam.
So that means Trump's team wants him to lose when he does a town hall on CNN.
No, because they know he has substance. He'll kick ass.
You know
so
the
lazy.
last time
So intellectually lazy.
Someone from that administration has been on Fox News. It was Joe Biden in 2020. Why would you start doing it now?
Because they're about to lose the election.
That's not going to help on a tactic
desperate.
point.
I'm about to lose my
They're
leg.
playing desperate.
Yeah, by the way, and let me just.
I can't believe you're actually saying that her own internal team, wink, wink, wants her to lose, so they set her up with Fox
Can I ask you a
News
question?
so that she could look bad and lose
Crazy.
the election.
Almost like there's a
basically
precedent
at
for them
2
doing
hours.
the same exact thing in this election cycle.
Yeah.
The same exact. They did that.
They did it to Biden. You act like
what they did to Joe Biden.
Yeah, you acted like we're the C word.
because they wanted to get
let's-
someone
let's-
in that had a
Let's
chance.
turn down the emotion minute and just look at.
I'm actually being logical here. Like,
No,
you go to other people's. Did you ever see the interview? Here we go. Listen, riddle me this,
Go
there,
ahead.
Batman.
Go ahead.
Patrick Bet-David, you think pretty highly of him?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a guy
Good
out
guy.
there called CoffeeZilla. You ever heard of him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, who's he?
He's a
Think
coffee.
about it.
He loves coffee.
He loves coffee, and he's also a monster. Basically, his whole agenda is doing hit pieces and exposés on big-time celebrities and influencers. And he did this was 2021, right around probably when you started. You could fact check it. When PBD went on CoffeeZilla, find me the date. I guarantee you it's like Q4 2021. What's my point? Fact check me. He did a hit piece on PBD being an MLM. So Pat, did you see what this guy put out there for you? Find the date. Rob?
That's always Marco. I'm looking.
So why would Pat go on to enemy territory on a guy who's exposing him and is going to set him up for failure and has questions ready to go to dismantle him? Pat goes, yeah, all right, cool. I'll do a live with you tonight.
April 22nd, 2021.
Okay, Q2 2020. I had my year right. Pat goes, listen, I'm not scared. I know what I do right. I'm going to go on to this. And what's my point? 90% of his audience is going to hate me. But there's going to be 10% that say, I respect this guy. I didn't like him before, but I'm going to go try and change some hearts and minds. So you go into an interview like this and say, I'm not getting 100% to vote for me, but can I get 1%? Can I get 5%? Can I get 10%? This is PBD. Why would you go on to a guy that does hit pieces for you? It's because you've already won the MAGA base. You need to go convert people. So when someone goes into enemy territory, whether it's Biden going on Fox or Kamala going on Fox or Trump going on CNN, to me there's a strategy there. And it's intellectually lazy to be like, her team just wants her to lose.
But
That's
Adam,
the reason that Pat went on CoffeeZilla.
Adam, you're assuming that it's a fair and balanced playground. Out of
I'm
all
not
the
assuming any fairness. I'm assuming you're going on enemy territory. That's the exact opposite of fair and balanced.
There's
It's skewed
channel
and not in your favor.
One channel that leans slightly right, and there is like how many? 8 channels.
Slightly right.
Fox News.
Slightly?
Slightly.
They're
In what world is
conservative.
it
Wait, they're
slightly right?
conservative, but they're not right-wing freaking QAnon.
Don't they have Newsmax? Don't they have OAN? There's other channels out there
Yeah,
that
but
are actually
they're conservative. No, bro, Fox News is not what Fox News was 10 years ago. Shit, 5
Are
years
we
ago.
saying that Fox is slightly right?
No,
a little bit?
they're
conservative. They're the right. What are we talking
Okay,
about?
but they're not right wingers. They're not, dude. They call out everybody's BS. They call out everybody's BS. Everybody's.
They do.
Yeah, by the way,
I guess Sean Hannity's still undecided.
Sean Hannity. Look, I don't trust Sean Hannity.
Well, but remember when Trump first came up, everyone at Fox hated him.
talking crap to him.
They were
You
all
know
talking
that.
crap. Some of them apologized, like Tucker Carlson.
Yep.
Some other ones still on the other side. You know,
There's a difference between the Murdochs, Roger Ailes, rest in peace, and the talking heads and the Tuckers and the Sean Hannitys and the Laura Ingrams and the general workforce from Fox. Listen, Fox is mostly conservative, not a little bit conservative. They're conservative. That's just like saying MSNBC is just a little bit to the left. Dude, they're hanging out on the end zone out
Come on,
here on the
Adam,
left.
Adam, they pushed the Iraq war. They pushed the
Yeah.
Afghanistan war.
Yep.
They
They're all-
lied to like conservative principles so much. 20 years of lying to conservatives.
Yeah, they also lied about the 2020 election and got sued for almost $1 billion from Dominion voting. So
Well, that goes into a whole different lawfare with Dominion and their machines. Which, by the way, Pat just had a guy on that proved that you could hack into any machine.
Corey Hursty. You should go and watch.
Allegedly.
You should go.
Allegedly.
You should go
bottom
and
line
watch
for
that
me.
podcast.
Bottom line for me. 10 seconds. I think it's a softball interview when she goes on Call Her Daddy. Of course, she's got. When she goes on Fox News to get interviewed for Best Bear, congratulations, good for you going and doing that. It's the same thing as why Pat openly respects someone like Bernie Sanders, even though he vehemently disagrees with 99% of his policies, but at least respects the fact that he has the balls to go onto other people's platforms.
Adam, but balls,
good for her in this
balls. But when you go into battle, you have to be prepared. Your swords have to be sharpened. Your freaking armor has to be tight and legitimate. She doesn't have any of that. So Pat can.
You're trying to tell me that she doesn't have balls?
No, Pat. Can
I don't know. I don't even know what a
Pat,
woman is at
Pat
this point.
can go into
They're
enemy
unbelievable.
territory because Pat's a warrior and has all the shit with him. Pat is ready to go because he has all the information. He has all the ammunition. She doesn't have it. So, well, hold on. So for you to pretend, like the Democratic Party wouldn't wheel out somebody. body to make them look stupid. I don't know what their motives are. That's exactly what they did to Joe
2
Biden.
weeks before an election? When
Well,
that's the candidate?
how many months ago was Joe Biden?
Yeah, but
And they did a switcheroo.
So are you trying? So let's go there. Are you saying that they're trying to do a switcheroo on her now?
Well, can I ask you a question?
No,
What's
answer
the
that.
October
Are they-
surprise? What can the October surprise be?
That she's a man, or that she's?
I
that
don't
she's
know,
a-
but let me.
Oh,
I don't even know.
guys! This has
What's the
suddenly
point?
become the unusual shout specs. So let's see if we can. Let's see if we can maybe
All right.
just step into look at a couple things like this. Right now, then you can argue. Okay, she's going out trying to find other votes. Clearly, she was. Anything they do right now, they are strategically trying to find a vote or to lock in a vote if that vote
And
maybe
so
is
is Trump.
on the ground.
That's what you should be doing.
Okay, so right. So now then there is an angle here, and the angle